Chapter 5:19. The brush in Su Yichin's hand moved swiftly, as if all the answers were already in her mind. There was no hesitation. All sorts of trivial matters came one after another, but Su Yichin remained calm and wise, maintaining a calm and composed demeanor. It seemed like nothing in the world could trouble her. I wonder how he's doing? After some time, Su Yichin suddenly sighed, raised her wrist, and put down her brush and chopsticks. In the clash at Deflecting Blade Manor, she had once more lost to Wang Chong and even been humiliated by Wang Chong. She, who had always been proud and arrogant, had no choice but to lower her head and agree to Wang Chong's request. Logically speaking, she should have hated this scoundrel to the bone, but for some reason, when she thought of the situation in the southwest and how Wang Chong could face the combined army of Mengshi Zhao and Uzun, Su Yichin's mind was in a mess. For some reason, Su Yichin recalled the 4 words Wang Chong had said to her on the day he left. "I believe in you." Wang Chong had said these 4 words with extreme solemnity. In the final moment, Su Yichin had seen Wang Chong's resolute and determined figure, leading countless clan experts down the mountain and disappearing into the southwest. At that moment, he had clearly understood something, but he had still chosen to leave without the slightest hesitation. He was like a moth flying into the sparks of a bonfire. At that moment, Su Yichin's eyes were wide open, her heart moved like never before. In Su Yichin's mind, Wang Chong had always been a selfish and smug person who didn't know what was good for himself, an unforgiving, extremely conceited person who only knew how to oppose her. This was the first time Su Yichin had seen this other side of Wang Chong, this other side of herself that had been buried deep in his bones. This side of him was so alluring. Don't die. No matter what, don't die. Su Yichin turned her head and looked through the window at a map on the wall. On the map, several places were marked conspicuously with needles and red ropes. The map was left behind by Wang Chong before he left. Other than Wang Chong, only Su Yichin knew what those marks represented. All the merchant caravans, horse caravans, and camel caravans had already set off. All the merchant caravans in the capital had been mobilized by her, not to mention the local clans and wealthy families. Only she, Su Yichin, could do all this and handle everything in an orderly manner. War equipment, rations, everything had been set out. Hundreds of merchant caravans, packed densely together like ants. Day and night, they surged towards that place without stopping. Judging from the time, the first batch of supplies should have already arrived at the location designated by Wang Chong. From now on, you can only rely on yourself. Su Yichin took a deep breath, turned her head, and continued to work on the documents on her desk. In the southwest of the empire, the sky was gloomy. The clip-clop of horse hooves was accompanied by flying grass and mud on the official road. Warning! Counting down. There is still half a day left. If user cannot reach the destination on time, he will be obliterated and the trial mission will be a failure. Warning! The Annam Protectorate has suffered heavy damage. 20 points of destiny energy have been deducted from user. Warning! User must increase his speed as quickly as possible. If the speed is less than 20 km per hour, 15 points of destiny energy will be deducted for every 2 hours. Warning! A string of messages flowed through Wang Feng's mind like a waterfall. As the army headed south, everything seemed calm, but only Wang Feng knew that this was far from being the case. In just a few short days, 80 points of destiny energy had been deducted from Wang Chong. He had defeated Batunlu, defeated Bashishing and broken through the pass to the south, but to Wang Chong, the undercurrents were even more turbulent. Wang Chong did not understand what had happened to Lion City. The city was clearly fortified, so why had so many points of destiny energy been deducted from him in such a short period of time? The situation in the southwest was still worsening, and the constant deductions of destiny energy in his mind were reminding him that this was far from the end. The stone of destiny was still tightening the pressure on him. But at this moment, Wang Chong was far from worrying about himself. Rather, he was worried about the Annam Protectorate in Lion City. Father has already reached that place. I hope I can make it in time. Wang Chong quietly said to himself. His goal in this journey was not to protect himself, but to save the Annam Protectorate in the southwest. If the Annam Protectorate was destroyed, then everything would be meaningless. All soldiers, hear my order. Everyone, advance at full speed. Wang Song brandished his long sword and took the lead in charging forward. The 300,000 Mengxijiao soldiers and the 200,000 Uzun soldiers were like a mountain weighing down on Wang Chong's chest. The closer they got to the south, the deeper they went into the Arai, the closer they were to danger and death. The victories they had won earlier did not mean that the situation had improved. On the contrary, it meant that they were under even greater pressure. This rapid march of several thousand li had never been a simple rescue mission. If they weren't careful and were discovered by Meng Shizhao, then the 10,000 soldiers led by Wang Chong could be crushed like eggs at any moment. Dark clouds gathered in the sky. At some point, a gust of wind had blown in from the south, carrying with it the thick scent of blood. This was the scent of the southwest battlefield. It seemed that this place was already not too far from the Arai. Wang Chong stopped. Seated on his horse, he raised his head to glance at the sky. Dark clouds hung low in the sky like waves. The air was suffused with an oppressive smell, as if something would sweep down at any moment. This was the smell of a storm. It's going to rain. Wang Chong looked at the sky and muttered to himself. He was no stranger to this smell. Unsurprisingly, the southern plains had already welcomed a storm, and this storm was rapidly approaching from the south to the north. "Milord, our brothers can't hold on much longer. Should we rest here for a while?" As Wang Chong was deep in thought, he suddenly heard a voice at his ear. Amidst the clattering of hooves, Su Shiping and Su Anduin rode over from behind. "Milord, our brothers have already been on the road for several days. I know that Milord is anxious, but without sufficient information, I'm worried that even if our brothers reach the Arai Plains, they won't be of much help." Su Anduin clasped his hands and bowed his head. "Brother Su is right. Our brothers truly do need information." Su Shiping glanced behind him and echoed his words. The soldiers of the army were all typical martial artists, and they were definitely much stronger than ordinary people. But no matter how strong they weren't made of steel. After so many days of constant travel, the army was already exhausted. A casual glance behind them would reveal the weariness of the army. This was a very dangerous situation. The two commandants had clearly reached an agreement on this point. No, now's not the time to rest. Wang Chong turned his head, his tone firm and unquestionable. The army truly was very tired. He didn't even need to think to know this. But now was not the time to rest. A person's potential was limitless. On the battlefield, one could not wait for one to eat their fill, have enough strength, and rest before fighting again. This was what war meant. In the dynasties of the Central Plains, a war would last for several days and nights, and there were many battles without rest. Would they have to retreat halfway through the battle? What Wang Chong was worried about was not whether the army would rest or not, but that Lion City would fall by the end of the day. If the Southwestern Protectorate Army was completely wiped out, then even if they had enough rest, it would be meaningless. Boom! Before Wang Chong could finish speaking, a bolt of lightning flitted across the sky, slithering through the dark clouds like a silver snake. With a plop, a bean-sized drop of rain fell onto Wang Chong's face. Turning his head, Wang Chong subconsciously wiped away the raindrops on his face. Su Shiping and Su Anduin also shut their mouths and subconsciously looked up at the sky. This was the first rain the pair had encountered since their journey south. Plop, plop. At first, it was just a few drops of rain, but as more and more came, they grew larger and larger. In the blink of an eye, a torrential downpour began to descend from the sky. The rain droplets were as dense as a curtain, and as they fell on the armors of everyone, they produced a continuous metallic clanging sound, like a musical movement. It was raining. 1, 2, 3. The soldiers raised their heads to look up at the torrential rain, and all of them were left dumbfounded. This heavy rain was definitely not within everyone's expectations. No one knew what this heavy rain meant. Wang Chong, Su Shiping, Su Anduin, and all the others were dumbfounded. Heavy rain, 3 days, the city is breached, Wang Chong muttered to himself as he gazed at the sky. A thought suddenly flashed through Wang Chong's mind, and his body trembled in understanding. Su Shiping, Su Onduan, I'll only give you 15 minutes to rest. The eagle, Zhao Jingdian, take all the cavalry and follow me. Yes, my lord. Rumble. Before many people could react, Wang Chong, the eagle, and Zhao Jingdian had led the remaining 2,000-some cavalry into the rain like a bolt of lightning, quickly vanishing. What are you waiting for? Didn't you hear? Rest where you are and eat some rations. Prepare to follow at a moment's notice. After a long pause, Su Onduan suddenly turned his head and sternly said. Although he didn't know what had happened, the change in Wang Chong's expression made Su Onduan certain of one thing. Something had definitely happened. Even though he still didn't understand. Plop. In the torrential rain, Wang Chong and his 2,000 cavalry formed a long line as they galloped through the rain. Thunder rumbled in the sky, but the voice in Wang Chong's mind was even louder than the thunder. 3 days. 3 days. Wang Chong had never understood why the Stone of Destiny had given him 3 days to get within 100 li of Lion City, until Wang Chong saw this majestic downpour. If everything went as expected, the war in the southwest was about to undergo a massive change. It wasn't that Lion City was breaching, but that the Annam Protectorate was breaking through. The rain continued to pour, casting the world in a hazy haze. Not even Wang Chong's eyes could see very clearly. From 10-some meters away, it was impossible to tell whether it was a mountain or a tree, a road or a person. If the Annam Protectorate wanted to break through, today would be their best chance. It seems like they're running out of rations. Wang Chong lowered his body as these thoughts flitted through his mind. Lion City is sturdy, but its biggest problem is rations. If they run out of rations, Lion City will be building a cage of its own. Thus, the Annam Protectorate must break through. Xinyu Zhongtong definitely won't have this sort of courage. He's a general who defends what he has, and if he can defend it, he won't leave so easily. To be so determined to break through, unless, as this thought flashed through Wang Chong's mind, he thought of his father and brother. If Xinyu Zhongtong was alone, he definitely wouldn't break out of the encirclement. But the Annam Protectorate still had his father and brother, Wang Yan. With them around, the situation would be completely different. This was especially true for his brother, Wang Fu. Although Li Jingyi was hailed as one of the younger generation of the Tang dynasty, and death was the most important thing, no one could say anything about it. But in terms of strength, strategy, and skill in the art of war, Wang Chong had always firmly believed that his brother, Wang Fu, was the true number one. Compared to Xinyu Zhongtong, his brother was more daring and meticulous, and he was definitely more adventurous and enterprising. If it were him, he would definitely be able to do it. Moreover, this rain was a heaven-sent opportunity. Wang Chong was confident that his brother, Wang Fu, would not remain unmoved by such a downpour. It's not the city breaking, it's not the city breaking. It's the initiative to break through. As he looked at the curtain of rain, Wang Chong's heart trembled with excitement. The eagle, lead the way with the giant eagle. In addition, send another giant eagle to contact Commandant Su and the others at any time. Wang Chong suddenly said. His body was already completely soaked. Rainwater seeped in through the gaps in his armor, then seeped out through the gaps below. Even his boots were covered in deep puddles. But Wang Chong no longer cared. Hiya! Squeezing his horse's abdomen, Wang Chong charged forward with all his might. Almost at the same time. Screech! 2 giant eagles flew diagonally through the curtain of rain and soared into the sky. One headed south, the other north, and they quickly disappeared into the curtain of rain. Wang Chong would never have imagined that Lion City would break through much earlier than he had imagined. Gallop, gallop. The sound of hurried hooves could be heard amidst the torrential downpour. In just a few moments, an Uzun scout rushed into Huoshu Wuzong's line of sight. How is it? Huoshu Wuzong's gaze was like lightning as he swept his gaze over the scout from atop his horse. Around him, the rain was as dense as a curtain, but all of the rainwater was bounced off when it was still 10 zhang away from him. Even now, the ground beneath Huoshu Wuzong's feet was still dry and impatient. "Milord, we've fallen into a trap. The Annam Protectorate didn't charge out from the west gate at all. We followed them out, but there were only a dozen or so Tang soldiers. The scout's face was covered in rainwater. It slid into his eyes and blew into his nose. He didn't even dare to wipe it off. In addition, the rain is too heavy. Quite a few of our brothers got lost in the rain. Bastard! Huoshu Wuzong was furious. The scout's expression froze. He lowered his head and didn't dare to say another word. "Milord! Milord!" Before Huoshu Wuzong could get angry, another Uzun cavalryman galloped over. Before Huoshu Wuzong could open his mouth, he shouted. There's no sign of the Tang dynasty's main force at the East Gate. The scouts from the North Gate and the South Gate had returned, but none of them had found any trace of the Tang army. The Uzun army had split into 4 groups to pursue the Tang army from the 4 gates, but none of them had found any trace of the Tang army. Bastard! Huoshu Wuzong's complexion turned extremely unsightly. There was no need to think too much about it. He was certain that he had been played. Xianyu Zhongtong definitely would not have been able to think of this plan, to open 4 city gates in succession, and then send soldiers to charge through the city gates while the waterfall was pouring down, forcing him to split his forces into 4 groups. Moreover, he definitely did not have the courage to do this. Having fought with Zhangzhou Jianxiong for so many years, Huoshu Wuzong was well aware of his subordinates. "Milord, is it possible that the Tang army is still hiding in the city?" An Uzun soldier cautiously asked. Huoshu Wuzong said nothing, only glared at him. The Uzun soldier's expression froze. He immediately realized that he had said the wrong thing. If the Annam Protectorate was still in the city, opening the gates like this was no different from inviting thieves to their deaths. What about Zheluoch? Hasn't their army moved out yet? Huoshu Wuzong asked, suppressing his anger. Meng Shizhao had an army of 300,000 soldiers. With their cooperation, the Annam Protectorate wouldn't be able to escape no matter how capable it was. "Milord, the king of Meng Shizhao has sent word that his army is currently in chaos. In addition, he sent word that this torrential rain is having an even greater effect on them than on us. Our cavalry are nimble, and the king of Meng Shizhao hopes that we can lead an army to pursue the Annam Protectorate army and not let them escape." Huoshu Wuzong didn't say anything. The surroundings were deathly silent. Only the pitter-patter of the rain and the cracking of Huoshu Wuzong's fists could be heard. At this critical moment, not a single one of Meng Shizhao's 300,000 soldiers could be counted on. There's no need to count on him. Jelifeng didn't say anything about this matter. The rain was boundless, and visibility was obstructed. Meng Shizhao mainly consists of infantry, and the ground is muddy. Right now, they can't even take care of themselves. They don't have the strength to pursue. At this moment, a calm voice came from the side. This voice contained a strange power. Like a pond after autumn, it could soothe all the anger in one's heart. At this moment, only the Prime Minister of the Uzun Empire's Ngari royal lineage, Daluan Ruozan, could say something like this. "Prime Minister, are you still speaking up for Meng Shizhao at this time?" Huoshu Wuzong said coldly. A military general wouldn't understand the other's standpoint. Since Meng Shizhao wanted to form an alliance with Uzun and borrow Uzun's strength, they needed to show that they believed in the strength of their side. "I'm not speaking up for them. This rain has completely ruined our plans." Daluan Ruozan gently put away his white feather fan. As he gazed at the dense curtain of rain in the sky, a strange expression appeared in his eyes. In this battle with the Annam Protectorate, as long as these remnants were eliminated, Uzun would obtain a complete victory. From then on, the Tang dynasty wouldn't be able to contend against Uzun in the southwest for the next few decades. But this heavy rain was like a bucket of water splashed onto a chessboard. It splashed away the chess pieces, messed up the chessboard, and disrupted his plans. Xinyu Zhongtong doesn't have this ability. In Lion City, perhaps only the Wang father and son can be so decisive. Chapter 520. Wang Yan and his son were not as famous as their father, Duke Jiao, in the Tang dynasty. However, as a general, Wang Yan was famous for his ability to fight. His military tactics were both offensive and defensive. Although he lacked flexibility, he was truly invulnerable. The army had besieged the city for so many days without any results. This was where the problem lay. Report. Traces of the enemy have been discovered. A large breach has appeared between the east and the south of the city. There is a gate at the breach. Many muddy horse tracks have been found below. As they spoke, the sound of galloping horses could be heard. Amidst the splashing rain, an elite cavalryman of the Uzun Protectorate rushed over. Before the horse came to a stop, the cavalryman dismounted and knelt on the ground, his chest rising and falling rapidly. Buzz. In an instant, the surroundings were silent. Whether it was Huoshu Wuzong or Daluan Ruozhen, they all fell silent. The army of over 200,000 soldiers split into 4 groups and chased through the 4 open gates, but in the end, they all failed. The Annam Protectorate actually escaped through one of the city walls. This was something that no one had expected. Without a doubt, they had been played. Zhang Shouji, the sound of the rain drowned out the thunder. Daluan Ruozhen slowly raised his head and looked at the towering silhouette of the city in front of him. A thought flashed through his mind. A gate was hidden in the solid city wall. This had nothing to do with the war. It was the masterpiece of the city's architect. It was no secret that Liu City was built by the architect of the Tang dynasty, Zhang Shouji. The Tang dynasty of the Central Plains is really full of talents. Daluan Ruozhen sighed deeply. Even as the enemy, Daluan Ruozhen could not help but admire the Tang dynasty's wealth of talents and culture. It was not something the Uzun Protectorate could compare to. Unfortunately, even so, it is useless. Let them escape for a while and be happy for a while. Huoshu Wuzong, I'll leave the rest to you. Huoshu Wuzong just sneered and said nothing. The torrential rain was indeed the best cover for the Annam Protectorate. Even they had no way of knowing when the Tang army would break out, and their eyesight was so poor in the pouring rain. However, if the Annam Protectorate thought that they could escape so easily, they were gravely mistaken. If they had defended the city, they might have been able to live for a few more days. However, they actually thought of abandoning the city and running away. That's simply courting death. Someone, blow the horn and summon the army. Huoshu Wuzong flung his cloak and left through the curtain of rain. Not long after he left, a bleak and sonorous sound of a horn rang out on the plain of Irai. The sound traveled 100 miles and was completely different from the ordinary horn. Even the dense curtain of rain couldn't block it. Following the loud and clear call of the formation, thunderous hoofbeats could be heard from all directions, and the densely packed Uzun swarmed over once again. Traces of the Communist Party have been discovered. An hour later, with a burst of noise, the atmosphere of the southwest suddenly changed and a tense pursuit began. At the same time, on the other side of the Irai Plains, Wang Chong was facing another crisis of his life. Warning! User has not yet reached his destination. Distance from Lion City is over 100 li. Warning! The host has less than an hour left. Warning! The trial mission is about to fail. There are still 10 kilometers left. User has not completed the mission and will be obliterated. Countdown, 50, 49, 48. Even with the white-hoofed shadow speed, getting within 100 li of Lion City in such a short time was still an arduous task. And the torrential rain was also a significant hindrance to Wang Chong. I have to go even faster. Even with Wang Chong's eyesight, he could no longer make out his bearings in this storm. The only thing he could rely on was the shrill cry of the eagle in the sky. Hiya! Wang Chong urged his horse forward like a bolt of lightning. Rays of red light had already appeared in front of him. Everything around him, including the torrential rain, was covered in a layer of flickering bloody light in Wang Chong's eyes. Everything around him slowly grew blurry. Wang Chong knew that this trial mission had reached a crucial point. If he could not reach his destination in time, all that awaited him was death. The matter of the Stone of Destiny was still a secret. Besides Wang Chong, not even the nearby eagle knew why Wang Chong was so desperate. 40, 39, 38. The Stone of Destiny's cold and emotionless voice resounded in his ears. However, Wang Chong maintained his calm, his face beneath his armor completely devoid of emotion. All his attention was focused on the thick line of blood in the depths of the storm. 100 kilometers. That red light should be the border. I have to get there as quickly as possible. Countless thoughts flashed through Wang Chang's mind. The torrential rain slammed against his armor like iron beads, but Wang Chong had no time to worry about anything else. The halo of Dusk's stallion had already been pushed to its limit. The two halos, one on the inside and one on the outside, rumbled and blew away the surrounding rain. Hiya! Wang Chong pushed the white-hoofed shadow to its limit. Whether or not Little Shadow can escape this calamity depends on you. Wang Chong whispered from atop his horse, his palm lightly patting the white-hoofed shadow's neck. The torrential rain blurred his vision, casting everything in a gray haze. Although Wang Chong could see the red light and vaguely see the border, he could not determine how far it was. At this moment, he could only place all his hopes on the white-hoofed shadow. Nay! The warhorse neighed as fiercely as metal. The white-hoofed shadow seemed to understand Wang Chong's meaning. All the muscles and tendons in its body tightened, and its already extremely fast speed was forcibly increased in this almost impossible situation. It was as if its hidden potential had been stimulated. Boom! The horse's hooves kicked up a waterfall of rain in the mud. From atop the horse, Wang Chong could clearly sense that the white-hoofed shadow was exerting all its strength. Every muscle and every bone was exploding with its potential. But Wang Chong was still in danger. 15, 14, 13, 12. The countdown continued. Not only did the rain not weaken, it seemed to grow even heavier. At the start, Wang Chong could still see 10 meters away, but now he could no longer see beyond 4 meters. This long-awaited downpour was far heavier than anyone had imagined. In this sort of situation, Wang Chong's judgment was completely off the charts. Without sufficient reference, Wang Chong couldn't even tell whether he was heading east or west. But one day, Wang Chong was certain that the giant arc of red light in his field of vision was growing more and more intense. Without a doubt, the distance between him and the white-hoofed shadow was closing. Little Shadow, I can only rely on you now. Wang Chong's body tensed up as he whispered into the white-hoofed shadow's ear. There was nothing he could do at this point. Even if his martial arts had greatly improved, he still couldn't outrun the white-hoofed shadow. 7, 6, 5, 4. It was only a short moment, but it suddenly felt like an eternity. Every second was stretched into countless fragments. Finally, Wang Chong could see that giant arc of red light. The light had reached its peak. But from his senses, he could tell that it was at least 50 meters away. There's no time. Wang Chong clenched his teeth. 50 meters was by no means a long distance, but at this moment, it had become a matter of life and death. 50 meters. Wang Chong's heart tightened to the extreme. The white-hoofed shadow's speed had reached its peak, and it couldn't go any faster. User is about to be obliterated. Counting down, 3, 2, 1. This was the first time Wang Chong had felt the Stone of Destiny's binding power ever since he had obtained it. Although it gave him a chance to be reborn, it also tied a rope tightly around his neck at the same time. Little Shadow, whether we can succeed or not depends on this. In the blink of an eye, Wang Chong had no time to think. He poured all of his strength into the white-hoofed shadow. Boom! The white-hoofed shadow seemed to sense something. At the last moment of the Hour of Destiny's countdown, the white-hoofed shadow stomped on the ground and soared into the sky like a cannonball. Neigh! The warhorse's neighing echoed through the night, and at the final moment before the warhorse soared into the sky, a figure flew into the air. In that final moment, Wang Chong had used all of his strength. This was a gamble of life and death. Wang Chong clenched his fists. Time and space seemed to freeze at this moment. Congratulations to user for arriving at your destination on time. The punishment of obliteration has been lifted. The reward for the first phase of the mission is 200 points of destiny energy, which will be distributed after the trial is over. After what seemed like both an instant and countless centuries, the Stone of Destiny's long-awaited voice finally resounded in Wang Chong's mind, but it sounded very different to him. Rumble! The frozen time began to flow again. Wang Chong somersaulted through the air and landed on the horse's front. That was close. Wang Chong let out a long sigh, his heart pounding. In that moment of life and death, no one but himself knew that he had escaped from the claws of the god of death. Young master. A familiar voice, battered by the wind and rain, came from behind him. The eagle, riding a buckskin horse, had caught up from behind. He looked at Wang Chong with a strange expression. Although the situation ahead was truly urgent, Wang Chong's performance just now had been too strange. It really didn't seem like he was on a normal journey. It was more like something had happened that he didn't know about. Young master, are you all right? The eagle asked hesitantly, as if he wanted to say something. Wang Chong shook his head. Just as he was about to reply, he suddenly heard a high-pitched cry. "Milord, there's an enemy up ahead." The eagle cocked his head to the side, but before he could finish speaking, he heard a massive drum beat. Dong dong dong. Each beat was incomparably loud, as if it were pounding on a person's heart. At the same time, the wild wind carried the raindrops with it, carrying the indistinct cries of battle in the distance. Those cries were definitely not the voices of one or two people, but more like the cries of tens of thousands of people. In an instant, the expressions of both Wang Chong and the eagle changed. There was no need to say anything more. "Follow me." Wang Chong waved his hand. Without another word, he led the eagle and the black dragon bandit elites that Li Sai had left behind to guard him. Braving the rain, they sprinted in the direction of the battle cries. Woo! As they galloped, the desolate, resonant sound of bull horns came from afar. When dozens of bull horns lined up in a row, even the rain could not stop them. It was Uzin's cavalry. Chapter 521. The rapid beating of war drums resounded across the land, echoing for hundreds of miles. Even the storm couldn't stop it. On the vast and undulating land, around a greenish-black mountain range, a magnificent battle was being waged. On one side of the battle were the endless sea and countless infantry, while on the other side were the fierce and courageous cavalry. The beating of war drums, the shouts of killing, the neighing of the neigh's horses, and the clanging of metal rang out across the vast land. There was a limit to the power of a single person, but when thousands of people were shouting and killing together, the sound of thunder and rain couldn't drown it out. Surround them. Don't let a single one of them escape. In the midst of the storm, a Tibetan general with a curved mustache turned his horse around and harshly bellowed, "Stop!" Around him, the formation of the Uzun cavalry was in chaos. The muddy terrain and the drizzling rain made it difficult for the Uzun cavalry to form a powerful formation like they usually did. Even so, the Uzun general still organized his army to attack with full force. The storm affected the Uzun, but it might not affect the Tang dynasty. At least, the formation of the Annam Protectorate might not be invulnerable. No matter what, now was the best time to eliminate the old enemy, the Annam Protectorate. Go, go, go! Break through their center and penetrate their formation. The Tang people will die. The Uzun general with a curved mustache kept commanding the soldiers around him to charge forward. However, even he did not notice that in a place not too far away from him, several figures were crawling under a low hill. Clumps of canister wood, commonly seen in the southwest of the empire, successfully covered them up. This was the first time Wang Chong and the others saw a battle of this level since they came south. Although the Uzun army around the mountain range was somewhat disorganized and did not display their normal strength, there were still a lot of them. They were so densely packed that it was impossible to tell how many people there were under the cover of the rain. However, one thing was certain. The Uzun army shrouded in the rain was definitely much larger than Wang Chong had imagined. If Wang Chong's 10,000 reinforcements were to encounter them at this time, they would be dead for sure. But now, all of the Uzun people's attention was focused on the Annam Protectorate on the mountain. No one paid attention to the commotion behind them. The dense rain also provided the best cover for Wang Chong and the others. "Sir, what should we do?" The eagle crouched beside Wang Chong, secretly worried. This trip to the south was originally aimed at the Annam Protectorate in Leo City. But now, the Annam Protectorate was near the top of the mountain. There was only an Uzun human wall between them. However, it was this human wall that stood in front of everyone like an insurmountable barrier. "Don't be anxious." Wang Chong waved his hand and lowered his voice. His hawk-like gaze pierced through the gaps of the shrubs and looked at the Uzun army opposite them. occupying the high ground and defending, overlapping one another, attacking more than defending. Moreover, they used the coiling snake formation. This was the style of his eldest brother, Wang Fu. His father was definitely not that agile. Xinyu Zhongtong was even more of a defensive general. Wang Chong couldn't be any more familiar with his family. The Annam Protectorate is different from Li Jingyi's reserve reinforcements. These are the Empire's elites stationed in the southwest. Although they are infantry, their combat strength far surpasses that of ordinary soldiers. Moreover, this war has gone through a series of massacres. Those who can survive are the elites of the elites. There won't be any problems for now. Wang Chong sternly said. Zhangzhou Jianqiong's reputation as the tiger of the Empire of the Southwest was not undeserved. The crux of the matter was that Xinyu Zhongtong was a defensive general who was not skilled at taking the initiative to attack. In a place like the Arai Plains, where there was no city to defend, a battle to the death with Meng Shizhao's army of 300,000 was completely a battle of weakness against strength. Even so, the Annam Protectorate still maintained a significant number of soldiers. These soldiers were the Empire's last hope and the crux of the southwest battlefield. If they could not preserve this army, the Annam Protectorate would become the first protectorate in the history of the Empire to be dissolved because of a defeat. More importantly, this would intensify the hostility of the surrounding barbarians against the Tang dynasty and cause them to covet the Central Plains. This was something that Wang Chong could not tolerate. Found it. Suddenly, Wang Chong's eyes brightened. His gaze pierced through the heavy curtain of rain and landed on a large banner on the summit. Although it was blurry and indistinct, Wang Chong could tell at a glance that this was his older brother Wang Fu's Li water banner. Wonderful! Wang Chong clenched his fists in excitement. There was a large age gap between the Wang brothers. Wang Fu had joined the army when Wang Chong was very young. Wang Chong had always had a very good impression of his older brother Wang Fu. In this aspect, he was completely different from his second brother Wang Bei. His older brother Wang Fu was the classic example of an older brother and had always cherished him and his younger sister Xiaoyao. Not so long ago, Wang Chong had also dreamed of meeting his older brother on the battlefield and fighting side by side with him. He hadn't expected that his dream would actually come true. Father is skilled in defense, and it won't be that easy to break through his defenses. But Big Brother is skilled in offense and defense, and his grasp of the art of war is even above Father's. With the two of them working together, one attacking and one defending, the Uzun army won't be able to easily succeed even if they outnumber him. As Wang Chong gazed in the direction of the summit, he felt much more at ease. The War of the Southwest was the Central Plains' first major setback, and the deaths of the 180,000 Annam Protectorate soldiers were an indescribable wound to the Empire. Thus, Wang Chong had long ago sent his father Wang Yan and big brother Wang Fu to a place near the southwest border. Now, all of this had been put to use. With his father and brother's talent for leadership, and with the assistance of Xinyu Zhongtong and the generals of the southwest, even Hoshu Wuzong and Daluan Ruozhen would find it hard to deal with them in a short period of time. Let's go! The Eagle, get me a few sets of Uzun armor. Wang Chong's eyes were focused on the fierce battle before him as he suddenly ordered without turning his head. Yes, young master. The Eagle subconsciously replied. Just as he was about to move out, there was a whoosh as the vegetation in front of him shook and a spray of mist washed over him. In the blink of an eye, Wang Chong's figure had disappeared. Young master! The Eagle cried out, his face paling. Only now did he realize that although Wang Chong had asked him to get him a few sets of armor, he hadn't said anything about himself. He wanted to get himself a few sets of armor. In a flash, the Eagle saw a short figure crawling on the ground, slithering like a python. In just a few moments, it had pierced through the mist and vanished into the distance. This lifelike appearance was completely unlike that of a human, more like a python. It had left a deep impression on the Eagle. When did young master learn this sort of technique? The Eagle was in a daze, completely unable to react. Even with his skills, he still couldn't display that kind of movement technique. With no time to think, the Eagle's body leaped forward and he quickly slithered out from behind the hill, disappearing in a few flashes. Bang bang! In the gray mist, a few muffled sounds could be heard, but they were mixed in with the sound of drums and thunder, so they were almost inaudible and were quickly suppressed. In just a few moments, Wang Chong and the eagle returned with a few sets of Uzun armor. After throwing a few sets of armor behind a hill, the group quickly changed their appearances, disguising themselves as Tibetan cavalry, and blended into the gray mist. Wang Chong and the others lowered their heads and quickly weaved through the curtain of rain, not alerting anyone. In just a few moments, Wang Chong had already searched the entire mountain range. There are definitely no more than 200,000 Uzun cavalry here. At most, there should be around 70 to 80,000. And I don't sense the aura of a Saint Martial Realm expert. Huoshu Wuzong and Daluan Ruozhen shouldn't be here. This is only the vanguard of the Uzun army. Wang Chong's expression was calm, but countless thoughts flashed through his eyes. In the Central Plains, the reputation of Huoshu Wuzong and Daluan Ruozhen of the Uzun Ngari royal lineage resounded like thunder. These two had single-handedly propped up the entire Uzun Ngari royal lineage, and even a fierce tiger like Zhangqiu Jinxiong had no choice but to adopt a defensive strategy. In the early years of the empire, these two were definitely the most illustrious existences in the region surrounding the Tang dynasty. Be it in his previous life or this one, Wang Chong had never seen them before. Although he had once imagined a battle with them, to the current Wang Chong and the Annam Protectorate, this was undoubtedly the best news. Encircling the Annam Protectorate, there's no reason why Huoshu Wuzong and Daluan Ruozhen can't be absent. They must be on their way here, or perhaps the poor visibility in the storm has caused them to deviate from their path of pursuit. Regardless of the situation, the current situation wouldn't last for long. I have to make a decision as soon as possible and break this stalemate. Wang Chong quietly said to himself. Bang! As he was thinking, he suddenly heard a commotion. On the summit of the mountain, the Tang army near the northeast had suddenly fallen into disarray. The cavalry below sensed the change and immediately increased the intensity of their attacks. Although they were quickly pushed back, the Tang army on the summit was still clearly visible. That gave me a fright. Fortunately, we managed to defend against it. The voice of a Black Dragon bandit elite rang out. Everyone was responsible for the rise and fall of the world. In the face of this upheaval in the southwest, there was no Black Dragon bandit or hired experts, only pure Tang people. Although the people around him had all breathed a sigh of relief, Wang Chong had no intention of relaxing at all. His eyes blazed as he gazed at the clumps of figures on the summit and the flashing shields, his brow deeply creased. Not good. The Tang army on the northeast side of the summit was clearly in disarray. There was no sign of the disarray that had just appeared, and it seemed to be expanding. This was no problem with the soldiers, and it certainly wasn't because Uzun's attacks were too fierce. Rather, it was because there was a problem with the command of the battle formation. It would have been fine at any other time, but this was a fatal situation. Big Brother Wang Fu's war banner was erected on the summit, and the northeast was his area of defense. If there was a problem with the command of the formation in the northeast, didn't that mean? Chapter 522. I hope that I'm overthinking things, Wang Chong stared at the summit, his brows rising. He could only hope that he was overthinking things. As long as the chaos on the summit stopped, it would prove that his conjecture was wrong. Or at the very least, it would only be a momentary phenomenon. 1 second, 2 seconds, 3 seconds. Although the soldiers on the northeast side of the summit were still maintaining their basic formation, the chaos in their formation was only increasing. Compared to before, the gaps in their formation were growing larger and larger. Bong bong bong. The anxious war drums continued to beat, and the northeast front line was constantly being torn apart, retreating step by step. Tang soldier after Tang soldier fell. Compared to the other lines, the northeast line was shrinking much faster. This isn't good. Even the eagle frowned. Although he was not as perceptive as Wang Chong, who could deduce that there was a problem with the command of the formation, he could still determine that if the northeast line could not hold, the rest of the army would soon be affected. With the northeast as the breakthrough point, the Uzun would swiftly crush the Annam Protectorate and exterminate the remnants of its army. Boom. In a flash, the Uzun horn blared through the curtain of rain. As the horn blared, the Uzun's attack swiftly changed. Like a surging wave, the Uzun cavalry began to move northeast. More and more people were surging toward this location. Not good. The change in Uzun's formation caused Wang Chong to grimace. The enemy commander was far smarter than he had imagined. The horn had clearly sensed the change in the northeast and was directing the army to this location. Once the Uzun army finished gathering, the northeast defense would be completely routed. Boom! There was no time to hesitate. The moment the horn sounded, Wang Chong urged his horse forward like a bolt of lightning. The eagle, have the giant eagle guide Su Shiping and Su Anduan. Have them lead the army here immediately. Pay attention to concealment and don't rush into action. Listen to my orders. Everyone else, follow me. Before his voice faded away, Wang Chong and the others had already disappeared into the wind and rain. Amidst the intense, vast and massive battlefield with hundreds of thousands of people participating in it, the battlefield in the district seemed insignificant and insignificant. In the pouring rain, along with a shrill scream, a Tang Dynasty infantry soldier failed to dodge in time. A long spear pierced through his chest and came out of his back. At the same time, clang, clang, clang. The three shield-bearers who were forced to retreat actually collided with each other in the process of retreating. The three of them were bound by their weapons and shields like rice dumplings, completely losing their balance. On the intense battlefield, such a mistake would be fatal. Along with a series of screams, the Uzun scimitars rapidly expanded in front of their eyes like intersecting fangs. The three shield soldiers of the Tang Dynasty only screamed before they were cut into several pieces by the sharp Uzun machete. The battle lines twisted and warped, the axemen unable to find their positions, the shield-bearers unable to sense the support of their comrades to their left and right. The entire army was losing its original shape. Large numbers of people were dying at every moment. Hold! No matter what, we can't let them break through our defense line. Where's Milord? Where's Milord? Why hasn't Milord given the order yet? Hold on. Our 80,000 brothers are right behind us. If we let the Uzun break through here and the army is wiped out, we'll be the criminals of the Annam Protectorate. Messenger, quickly ask Milord for instructions. War halos vibrated in the rain. On the summit, the leading Tang officer's eyes were red as he roared with all his might. He had personally gone into battle and cut down 2 Uzun cavalry, but in a battle of tens of thousands, this was negligible. The army was about to collapse, and it wouldn't take long. When he thought of this, the Tang officer was so worried that his chest was about to explode. In the last few days, he had seen far too many of his brothers die. The elites of the Annan Protectorate and the brothers at his side had fallen one by one. The air of the Arai plain was thick with the stench of blood. Far too many people had died. There couldn't be any more people. It was this belief that had been deeply supporting him all this time. But he could not understand what was happening on the summit. He looked back and saw that the huge flag was still fluttering on the top of the mountain. Under the flagpole, the young leader of the younger generation of the great Tang Empire, who was second only to Li Jingyi, was kneeling on the ground. His head was drooping and he seemed to be deep in thought. "Milord, hurry and give the order." The Tang general anxiously roared as he turned his head to look. But as a bolt of lightning flashed by, that all-out roar was immediately drowned out by the thunder and the fighting cries of the army. In the rain, all sound was scattered, making it impossible for it to travel very far. Buzz! The chaos in the army was spreading, and the attacks of the Uzun soldiers were multiplying. Looking down from the summit, one could see more and more Uzun soldiers surging toward the summit. Several dozen zhang away, a position was being torn apart by the Uzun soldiers. At this moment, despair appeared in the eyes of the Tang officer. It was too late. It was too late. After spending so much effort to break out of the encirclement and holding out for so long, were they going to be completely wiped out today? Just when the Tang officer was feeling dejected and powerless, about to give up, he suddenly heard the neighing of a neigh horse. Boom! As far as the eye could see, a white horse like a dragon leaped high into the air, flying over the Tang formation like a rainbow. Axeman, Right flank, 50 paces forward. Shield soldiers pull back. Tortoise shell formation. Pikemen work with the formation. Archers, aim for the enemy and work with the axemen to attack. A clear voice came from above, suffused with a calming strength. Careful, it's the Uzun. Suddenly, someone screamed. Bastard! Do the Uzun know how to speak the language of the Tang dynasty? And they're like us? The Tang officer harshly rebuked. Although there had been so little time that it was impossible to identify the other party, there was one thing he could be sure of. But there was one thing he could be sure of. This person could be anything, but he could not be a Tibetan. The people of Uzun rarely knew how to speak the language of the Central Plains, and even if they did, they would speak with a thick accent of the plateau. This was impossible to disguise. And besides, that white horse was not one of the highland steeds of the Uzun. Gallop. The other party moved with incredible speed, vanishing into the rain in a few moments. Just who was that person? This thought flitted through the officer's mind, but he quickly forgot about it. Axeman. Right flank, 50 paces forward. Shield soldiers pull back. Tortoise shell formation. Pikemen work with the formation. Archers, aim for the enemy and work with the axemen to attack. Not long after Wang Chong disappeared, the Tang officer repeated Wang Chong's order without missing a single word. In the current situation, there was no time to worry about anything else. They could only try. Rumble. The axemen attacked, the shield soldiers pulled back, the tortoise shell formation, and the archers attacked. Everything was done in a short period of time. The army, which was initially in a state of confusion and bewilderment, quickly regained their composure. Obedience is the duty of soldiers. Commanding a battle formation was not something ordinary soldiers could dabble in, nor was it something they were skilled in. When the situation was unfavorable and there were no orders, the army would panic. But once an order was given, all the soldiers would work together like a precise machine, rumbling to life for a single purpose. The danger to the army had been temporarily resolved, but the Uzun army was in a state of chaos. The area where those several thousand axemen had cut into was precisely where the Tibetan army's defenses were the weakest and most scattered. Just who is that fellow? The Tang officer was even more shocked at this sight. The white-hoofed shadow was a divine steed amongst steeds, its speed and leaping height far surpassing that of ordinary horses. As the horse's hooves landed, Wang Chong immediately took off all the Uzun armor he was wearing. At this time, disguises were meaningless and would only attract unnecessary trouble. Out of the way, out of the way. This is the order. Everyone out of the way. Wang Chong's entire body was drenched, and his hair was stuck to his forehead. Rainwater flowed down his forehead like a stream, sliding down his nose, his lips, his lower jaw, and finally onto the white-hoofed shadow, dripping to the ground. Wang Chong raised the King of Song token high in his hand, the golden dragon side facing outward, and charged toward the flagpole at the summit. Wang Chong's plan swiftly took effect. Upon seeing the dragon on the token, everyone began to retreat, opening a path for Wang Chong. The plan just now can only help them temporarily stabilize the front line. The Uzun still have at least 160,000 soldiers that haven't appeared. Time is short, so I have to think of a way to resolve this problem. Wang Chong's heart was in a knot, a deep worry filling his heart. A single person's strength was ultimately limited, but no matter what, since he had already entered this battlefield that he could only look up to, and since the heavens had already given him a chance to change the fate of the empire, he would definitely not let it slip by so easily. Hiya! With a determined gaze, Wang Chong leaped over a large boulder and charged up the mountain. Who's there? Stop. Just when Wang Chong was about to reach the commander's tent, a thunderous roar came from the summit. At some point, a tall and muscular man, armed to the teeth and wielding a massive shiny saber, had appeared, aiming it at Wang Chong. The wind howled and the rain pelted his body, but before it could get close, it was shattered into pieces. Chapter 523. Wang Chong had never felt such a sharp aura before. The other party's saber chi was boundlessly heavy, as though a mountain was pressing down on him. However, it was restrained, gathering all of its might into a single point. At that moment, Wang Chong sensed that if his answer did not satisfy the other party, he would be cleaved in two in the blink of an eye. What a fearsome expert! Wang Chong's heart trembled, and he was about to reveal his identity. But in the next moment he heard a pleasantly surprised voice. "Young Master Chong, why are you here? How did you get here?" Clang. Before Wang Chong could react, he heard a sharp metallic clang. With a flick of his wrist, the saber master sheathed the long saber into its scabbard. "You are." Just as Wang Chong was feeling bewildered, he heard a rustle. That tall and muscular man pulled down his mask, took off his head, and shook his head, revealing a bearded face with a sharp glint in his eyes. "Uncle Chen." Wang Chong's heart thumped as he recognized the man. That bearded man was none other than one of his father's old subordinates, Qin Shusun. He was both brave and astute, and he was his father's trusted aide. It was said that he had been with his father ever since his father joined the army. Wang Chong's father was a harsh man, and he was extremely strict with his subordinates. Normally, he wouldn't easily bring his subordinates into the capital. Even the guards of the Wang clan had been injured on the battlefield, and their cultivation had been greatly reduced, making it impossible for them to participate in battle. When Wang Yan arrived, he left them a path of survival and found them jobs, which was why he recruited them into the residence. As for the others, the Wang clan could forget about meeting them. Wang Chong had only met this Qin Shusun once, when he was young. But it was only that one time. Even so, Wang Chong had a very good impression of this old subordinate of his father. When he was young, he had even ridden on his head. At the time, his father was very strict with him and did not allow him to play with any toys, so Qin Shusun had carved a flying bird for him. That was Wang Chong's first toy when he was young, so he had a deep impression of it. Of course, the most important thing was that Wang Chong clearly remembered that this old subordinate of his father had been sent by his father to serve his eldest brother, Wang Fu, many years ago. The reason why he did this was not because he wanted to promote him, but because his father was afraid that his eldest brother would use his family background and his influence to engage in nepotism in the military, so he sent him to supervise him. Of course, Big Brother used his own strength to prove himself in the end. He proved that he didn't need to rely on the power and influence of his family to achieve a high level of attainment. Therefore, Uncle Chen became Big Brother's subordinate. "Young Master Chong, shouldn't you be in the capital? Why are you here?" Chen Shusun rushed over and grabbed Wang Chong. He looked him up and down, nervous and anxious. "This isn't a game, and it's not a place where you can throw a tantrum. Why did you come here? Are you crazy?" This was far too surprising. This was no longer a pleasant surprise, but a fright. The southwestern battlefield had already become a land of certain death. Countless Annam Protectorate soldiers had died in this region, and many of their own had died as well. 300,000 Mengshizhao soldiers and 200,000 Uzun soldiers. This was a force that was suffocating. Every day they lived on the brink of death. No one knew if they could survive this calamity, and no one knew when they would die. This situation was bad enough, but Chen Shusun had never imagined that Wang Chong would arrive at this time and in this manner. "Young master, you're letting your emotions affect your decisions," Chen Shusun said in exasperation. "Uncle Chen, there's no time to talk about this. Why isn't Big Brother commanding? Just what happened?" Wang Chong took a step forward, shaking off Chen Shusun's arm and striding toward the golden armored figure at the base of the banner. This banner was the insignia of Big Brother Wang Fu, so there was no question that Big Brother Wang Fu was the leader of this mountain. Big Brother. The massive banner flapped in the wind and rain, but the golden armored figure sat cross-legged at the base of the banner as if he hadn't heard the commotion behind him. Wang Chong walked over and took a sideways step, subconsciously grabbing the man's shoulder. But a moment later, Wang Chong's voice came to an abrupt halt. Wang Chong was struck dumb by the sight of the armored figure. The figure under the armor was very young, definitely no older than 20. Although his figure was very similar to his big brother's, Wang Chong was sure that this was not his big brother Wang Fu. "If you're not my big brother, then who are you? Where's my big brother?" After a moment of silence, Wang Chong suddenly reached out and grabbed the collar of the man's armor. It was clearly his big brother who was leading the army, and it was his big brother who was flying the banner, but the one leading the army was not his big brother. For a few moments, Wang Chang's mind was blank, unable to understand what was going on. There was even a moment when Wang Chong felt extremely uneasy. The battle at Lion City had lasted for nearly a month. Had something happened during this long period of time? Or perhaps Big Brother had actually failed to break out of the encirclement. As countless thoughts flitted through his mind, Wang Chong maintained his composure, but his pale complexion revealed his true thoughts. Eldest young master is fine. Young Master Chong, there's no need to make things difficult for him. I was the one who had him wear eldest young master's armor. At this moment, a voice came from behind him. Chen Shu-sun walked over with a grim expression. Young Master Chong, I apologize. In truth, I didn't want this to happen either. After Chen Shu-sun, the young man with the tender face spoke up, his expression a little awkward and nervous, but he quickly regained his composure. His expression was somewhat awkward, as if he didn't know whether to stay or leave. Zhang Qi, sit there for now and don't move. The morale of the army isn't stable right now. Without my order, you can't move recklessly. Chen Shu-sun seemed to know what the young man was thinking and raised a finger. Yes, my lord. Upon hearing the order, the young man sat back down and remained motionless. Uncle Chen, what's going on? Wang Chang's grim gaze fell on Chen Shu-sun. Hey, young Master Chong, come with me. Chen Shu-sun sighed and said no more. He gestured to Wang Chong, then turned around and walked away. Wang Chong followed behind him and entered a large white tent on the summit. There was only one commander's tent on the entire summit, its white canvas flapping in the wind and rain. But because it had been coated with a layer of butter to waterproof it, not a single drop of rain was able to get in. You are welcome to follow my official WeChat account and Weibo. You can search for Huang Fuqi. There are many things that can't be found in novels. Within the white commander's tent, a tall and slender young man with a sparse beard and handsome facial features was lying motionlessly on the bed. His lips were slightly pursed, and he exuded a cold, determined, and decisive aura. His eyes were tightly shut, and he wore only his undergarments. Around him, a few bodyguards were attending to him, and their eyes were filled with worry. Big brother. Wang Chong stepped into the commander's tent, and upon seeing that cold and handsome young man, his body trembled and he rushed forward. How could this be? What's going on here? Wang Chong's two hands gripped his big brother Wang Fu's right hand, but his gaze was turned to Chen Shu-sun. In Wang Chong's impression, his big brother Wang Fu had always been a determined, decisive existence. He would never hesitate, as if there was nothing in the world that could stump him. Thus, ever since he was a child, Wang Chong had held his big brother in great reverence. Even Wang Chong's rebellious second brother, Wang Bo, would be much more restrained in front of Wang Fu. It was said that the eldest brother was like a father, and in Wang Chong's impression of his big brother Wang Fu was more or less the same. But this time, it was completely different. Wang Chong had never seen his big brother like this. As Wang Chong held his big brother's hand, he felt that it was incomparably cold. His face was as white as paper, and his breathing was more exhaling than inhaling. What made Wang Chong's heart even colder was that a part of his chest had clearly caved in. This was definitely not normal. Alas! Chen Shu-sun sighed and slightly raised his head. As he gazed at the top of the white tent, a look of reminiscence appeared in his eyes. Since it's come to this, there's no need for me to hide it. What I see today is that eldest young master is injured and unconscious. There are no military doctors in the army, and military doctors are unable to treat his illness. So right now, we are also helpless. Who on earth injured my big brother? Wang Chong clenched his fists so tightly that they creaked. His eyes were crimson as he spoke in a frosty tone. Brothers were connected by heart. In this world, the people closest to him, the ones he treasured the most, were his parents, his two older brothers, his younger sister, and the members of the Wang clan. No matter what, he would not allow his family to be injured. It's Huoshu Wuzong's general, the Zifidan Jiao Sero, the second valiant general of the Uzungari royal lineage after Huoshu Wuzong. When eldest young master broke out of Lion City, He was pursued by Jiao Sero. In order to protect the army, Jiao Sero was injured. Chen Shusun paused and glanced at eldest young master Wang Fu's caved-in chest. But the one who truly injured eldest young master was Huoshu Wuzong. After defending Lion City for more than 10 days, eldest young master was heavily injured by Huoshu Wuzong, but he kept it a secret. If not for this, eldest young master wouldn't have been injured in battle with Jiao Sero. Eldest young master persisted for more than an hour, but eventually his injuries flared up and he fainted. There was no one to command the front lines, and in order to maintain morale, I took the liberty of finding a soldier with a physique similar to eldest young master and had him wear eldest young master's armor to guard the banner. As long as eldest young master is alive, the morale of the army will remain. Otherwise, it will only bring chaos. Chen Shusun said deeply. Only those who had lived in Lion City and gone through thick and thin with the army would understand what Wang Fu meant to this army in dire straits. The combined army of Mengshi Zhao and Uzun was several times that of the Tang dynasty. In this situation, defending passively was the only choice. And waiting for death was the final outcome. Oftentimes, even before the final outcome had arrived, the oppressive atmosphere had already caused the army to collapse without a fight. The only reason that the Tang army of Lion City had not collapsed, that they had persisted until now, and that they were still able to maintain their fighting spirit in the face of an enemy several times their size, was eldest young master Wang Fu. Unlike Xinyu Zhongtong and the other generals of Annan, Wang Fu was the only person in the army who could not command the army to attack while defending the city. In his time, the army had never passively defended or waited for an attack. In his time, the Tang army would attack from time to time, killing or injuring Mengshi Zhao's and Uzun's men. It was precisely because of Wang Fu's existence that the defenders of Lion City were not passively attacked, and that their morale and fighting spirit were maintained. It was also because of this that Uzun and Mengshi Zhao did not dare to be too impudent. Chapter 524. Wang Chong said nothing. All his attention was focused on his big brother, Wang Fu. Although he was not a doctor, Wang Chong still had his martial experience. His meridians are in a mess, and his internal organs are injured. The Celestial Pond, Xujing, and Shangfu meridians are all injured. As for his chest, it's only a superficial wound, nothing too serious. What's important is the stellar energy that Huoshu Wuzong left in his body. Wang Chong's mind was in turmoil, and a hint of worry appeared in his eyes. His big brother Wang Fu had two different kinds of stellar energy in his body. One belonged to Huoshu Wuzong, and the other naturally belonged to the Zifidon Jiao Sero. Jiao Sero's stellar energy was tyrannical and fierce, but it was still quite lacking compared to a general like Huoshu Wuzong. For his big brother to encounter Huoshu Wuzong at this time was definitely not a good thing. It was already quite good that he could escape with his life. Huoshu Wuzong, Huoshu Wuzong. Wang Chong muttered to himself, his heart burning. His big brother's situation was not very optimistic. The supreme techniques he had been afflicted with had all originated from the Uzun Great Snow Mountain Temple, which was completely different from the schools of the Central Plains. If he could not expel the strange stellar energy, his big brother was certain to die. Perhaps not even the nearby Chen Shusun understood this point. In the southwest of the empire, countless generals had died to Huoshu Wuzong's tyrannical stellar energy in the battles against the Uzun. Not many people knew of this point, but it would no longer be a secret in the future. There has to be a way, there has to be a way. Wang Chong raised his head, countless thoughts flashing through his eyes. If he wanted to expel the strange stellar energy of the Uzun Great Snow Mountain Temple, he had to know the path of its circulation. And in the Central Plains, because of the distance, almost no one knew. However, Wang Chong was not one of them. Right, Sanzang, Lu Quan, Ziling. Suddenly, Wang Chong came to a realization. So. Without the slightest hesitation, Wang Chong pointed his finger like a sword, and wisps of tiny sword energy shot out from his fingertip, stabbing at the Sanzang, Lu Quan, and Xiling acupoints on Wang Fu's body at lightning speed. Because he did not have any steel needles, Wang Chong used thin streams of sword qi instead. 3 streams of sword qi pierced through Wang Fu's body, causing 3 streams of blood to spurt out. Young master! Wang Chang's sudden attack shocked Qin Shusun. Do you have water? Get me some water. Wang Chong paid no attention to Qin Shusun, not even turning his head. Qin Shusun stared blankly, then his expression slowly softened. He originally wanted to stop Wang Chong, but for some reason, when he heard Wang Chong's firm voice, he couldn't say anything to stop him. Get me some water. On a rainy day like this, there was no lack of rainwater. Using a container to catch the rainwater, Wang Chong took out 2 round, thumb-sized pills from an embroidered box and fed them to Brother Wang and Wang Fu. Whether or not I succeed will depend on these 2 pills. Wang Chong looked at Wang Fu's pale complexion and said to himself, the wounds caused by a battle between martial arts experts were not something that could be healed by any kind of medicine. Nor were they something that could be healed by medicines like Yujin powder or Violet Palace Spirit. These 2 pills had been made by a Grand Master of the palace and were of extremely high quality. These 2 pills were usually given to the princes and grandsons, as well as the concubines and concubines of the palace. Let alone buying them, one could not even see them. Not even the imperial princes had the fortune to enjoy them. Wang Chong had taken a huge risk to buy these pills from the palace alchemist. These were miraculous medicines that could save his life, and their effects were even greater than those he had given to his master, the evil emperor. Wang Chong had originally planned to use them for himself in the future, but there was no time to worry about such things now. After taking the 2 pills, Wang Fu's breathing clearly improved, and his pale complexion gradually regained some color. Upon seeing this, Qin Shusun immediately swallowed the words that he had been about to say. No matter how slow he was, he understood that Wang Chong's method had truly been effective. Have 2 people stay here and take good care of Big Brother. With a wave of his sleeve, Wang Chong stood up and walked out of the commander's tent. His big brother had already taken the palace's divine medicine and would be fine for the time being. The urgent matter at hand was to resolve the crisis facing the army as quickly as possible. Voila! Outside the tent, the torrential rain continued to pour, showing no signs of weakening. Wang Chong's hawk-like gaze constantly scanned the earth. Not even Wang Chong himself noticed that his body was exuding an intimidating aura. All the messengers and guards around him trembled and subconsciously lowered their heads, an indescribable reverence in their hearts. Uncle Qin, does father know that my big brother is unconscious? Hearing the footsteps behind him, Wang Chong didn't even turn his head as he spoke. Qin Shusun shook his head. Our infantry and cavalry mix simply can't outrun the Uzun. Moreover, the Uzun army is hot on our heels, so when Master and eldest young master saw the tallest mountain in the surrounding 100 li, they decided to use this mountain as a base to set up a defense line and engage the Uzun in battle. The mountain range is too wide, so Master is responsible for the eastern defense line while eldest young master is responsible for this area. Then what about Protector General Xinyu and the other generals of the southwest? Wang Chong asked. We didn't see Lord Xinyu Zhongtong. This rain is too heavy. Many of the Uzun soldiers have lost their way, and many of us have also lost our way. I'm afraid that we've temporarily lost contact with Lord Xinyu Zhongtong and the others. Qin Shusun sternly said. Breaking out of the encirclement in the rain was not without its price. With so many people escaping together, it was no simple matter to maintain order and avoid chaos. As expected, at the mention of Xinyu Zhongtong's name, Wang Chong couldn't help but crease his brow, but he quickly regained his composure. Take off your armor and give it to me. Wang Chong's gaze swept over the nearby soldier who had replaced his big brother, Wang Fu, and suddenly stepped forward. Starting from now, the army will be under my command. Young master, now is not the time to argue. Wang Chong waved his hand, taking out the King of Song's golden token and raising it high in the air. This is the King of Song's token. Given the King of Song's temperament, you don't think that he would casually give me a token, do you? Moreover, from the north to the south, Uzun cavalry are everywhere. Uncle Qin, do you also think that simple bravery can accomplish this? I know that you have your doubts, but now is not the time to talk about them. Qin Shusun froze, momentarily at a loss for words. Truly, no matter how young Wang Chong was, he had still come from a clan of ministers and generals, so he had some understanding of the art of war. Moreover, there was one thing that Wang Chong was right about. In the army, the king of Song had always kept his personal and private interests separate. If he had given Wang Chong a token and had him come to the south, he must have had a reason for doing so. He must have felt that Wang Chong was suitable for this task, and it couldn't have been just because he was familiar with the Wang clan. Did you hear that? Take off your armor. Qin Shusun suddenly pointed at the young soldier in golden armor. I hope that young master is right, Qin Shusun quietly said to himself. At a time like this, he could only make every possible effort. There were very few people in the army who knew how to command a battle, and those who could reach the level of eldest young master Wang Fu were even fewer. Otherwise, he wouldn't have just found someone to pretend to be the eldest young master and do nothing else. Wang Chong said nothing. He didn't have as many thoughts as Qin Shusun did. His top priority was to quickly take over this battle. You are welcome to follow my official WeChat account and Weibo. You can search for Huang Fuqi. There is much content that can't be found in novels. How many people do we have in total? Wang Chong said as he put on his armor. I don't have an estimate, because quite a few people have gotten separated. However, there should be around 40 to 50,000. There are also people with Lord Xinyu Zhongtong, Qin Shusun said. Qin Shusun said, how many people does Uzun have? Besides Uzun, are there any Meng Shizhao's people? Wang Chong asked. I estimate around 70 to 80,000. We haven't seen Meng Shizhao's people yet. Meng Shizhao's people are mainly infantry, and they can't compare to us in terms of training. If they want to catch up to us in this heavy rain, it would be impossible for Meng Shizhao's 300,000 soldiers to maintain order. Thus, eldest young master also said that we should only be facing Uzun's people for the time being. However, Meng Shizhao's crown prince, Fenjie, has also led a group of several thousand cavalry in pursuit of us. Qin Shusun immediately said, his head lowered. Not even he realized that he had unwittingly accepted Wang Chong's role, treating him as eldest young master and replacing him as the commander of the army. Fenji? Wang Chong narrowed his eyes, his gaze suddenly turning much colder. The prosperity of Meng Shizhao's empire could never compare to the Tang dynasty. It was not like the Tang dynasty, which could simultaneously establish protectorates in Anxi, Baiding, Anong, Longxi, and the southwest, simultaneously dealing with all the enemies in the area. Meng Shizhao would never have been able to do this. Even now, Meng Shizhao had only been dealing with the protectorate army in a corner of the southwest. One country against one corner made it impossible to tell the difference in strength. Moreover, Meng Shizhao's famed generals were far inferior to the Tang dynasty. And unlike the Tang dynasty, Meng Shizhao only had a few famed generals. And Fenjie was one of them. Unlike the impression of a small country with few people and a muddle-headed crown prince who was ignorant and incompetent, Fenjie was definitely one of the few crown princes in the history of the Meng Shizhao Empire, and one who was both brave and astute. As a vassal state of the Tang dynasty, the Meng Shizhao Empire had always had the custom of having its crown prince enter the court as a hostage. However, in the Tang dynasty, it was not called a hostage. Most people would not be willing to take the crown prince of the imperial family as a hostage. But Fenjie was different. He had volunteered to go to the Tang dynasty. He had been filled with a yearning for the Tang dynasty since he was a child, but this yearning was not what many people imagined. As the crown prince of a foreign country, Fenjie was a rare diligent person. He had an intense curiosity about military books, strategies, and martial arts, from the imperial family to the common people. During his time as a hostage in the capital, Fenjie's diligence and talent had left even his teacher sighing in praise. Moreover, he had sent a memorial to the Holy Emperor, requesting that Fenjie be recommended to an official position so that he could remain in the Tang dynasty and enter the imperial court. Given the customs of the Tang dynasty, it was already quite excellent that he could make this exception. But Fenjie had immediately refused. And Fenjie's martial prowess had made him famous in the capital, on the level of an outstanding talent. He had always been a member of the Mengshi Zhao imperial clan and had been rewarded by the Holy Emperor, so he had learned many martial arts. Moreover, he had access to many resources that ordinary people could not access, so he had matured far faster than the average person. In the capital, even the crown prince's junior guardian, Wang Zhongxi, had praised him, saying that he was a master of both the pen and the sword, a talent for becoming a great general. From this, one could imagine just how talented he was. But contrary to what many people imagined, Fenjie's goal had always been very clear. He wanted to learn from the Tang dynasty and strengthen Mengshi Zhao. Moreover, compared to his father, Jelifeng, Fenjie was even more ambitious. He was young, energetic, and talented. He had studied military books and strategies, had been taught by Wang Zhongxi, and had received the martial arts manuals of the Tang dynasty. He also had countless resources at his disposal. Fenjie's goal was to strengthen Mengshi Zhao and then completely break away from the Tang dynasty. And in this attack on the Tang dynasty, Fenjie was the commander of Mengshi Zhao's vanguard. Together with Mengshi Zhao's great general Duan Gichuan, he and Mengshi Zhao's great general Duan Gichuan were the two daggers stabbing into the heart of the Tang dynasty's southwest. Chapter 525. Fenjie, he should be at least at the profound martial realm by now, perhaps even higher. Wang Chong quietly said to himself. It had been many years since Fenjie had entered the capital as a hostage. Even if Fenjie had not reached the level of an imperial great general, he was probably not too far off. However, war had never been a matter of pure strength. Otherwise, So Yongsun would have been able to unify all the countries on his own. Let's not worry about Fenjie for now. Listen to my orders. Gather all the cavalry. Wang Chong waved his hand, his voice unquestionable. But all the cavalry have already entered the defensive lines. If we summon all of them back, the situation on the front lines will become even more dire. Chen Shusun said in shock. There's no time to worry about that. Do as I say. Wang Chong firmly said. This, yes. Chen Shusun lowered his head. Not even when he was with the eldest young master, he had been this docile, but when he spoke to Wang Chong, perhaps because of the latter's calm and confident tone, Chen Shusun found that he had unconsciously begun to think according to Wang Chong's plan. In addition, gather all the archers. Listen to my orders and execute them. Wang Chong continued. His eyes were bright, seeming to peer into the depths of spacetime. Not even the gray curtain of rain could obstruct his vision. In the art of war, 100 men's tactics were different from 1,000 men's tactics, 1,000 men's tactics were different from 10,000 men's tactics, and 10,000 men's tactics were different from 40,000 or 50,000 men's tactics. The Annam Protectorate was made up of the elites of the empire, and those who had survived this upheaval were the elites of the elites. To Wang Chong, 40 to 50,000 soldiers was more than enough for him to use all of his skills in the art of war. 70,000 Uzun cavalry. It's still unclear who's attacking or defending, and it's still unknown who's pursuing us. Wang Chong looked at the Uzun army that was spread all over the mountain and sneered in his heart. Elementary halo of fortress, intermediate halo of fortress, advanced halo of fortress formed by 10,000 soldiers, and their plate armor. If Wang Chong's 10,000 reinforcements were to encounter such an army, they would be doomed. In a war between legions, the more people there were, the more powerful they would be. However, at this moment, Wang Chong did not feel that the Uzun cavalrymen had any sort of advantage. Whether it was the primary, intermediate, or advanced halo of fortress, they were all useless against the Annam Protectorate. As far as Wang Chong could see, different colored halos filled the army. These dazzling halos constantly emitted ripples that spread out and covered the entire army. The Uzun had many powerful generals, but the Annam Protectorate had even more. After fighting in the southwest of the empire for decades, the armies of both sides were already very familiar with each other's tactics, and war halos. Elite legions of the empire that had more than 10,000 people could form advanced large-scale war halos. The advanced halo of fortress of the Uzun was one of them. As the archenemy of the Uzun, the Annam Protectorate also had it. However, unlike the Yuuzhan's choice of halo of fortress, the Annam Protectorate chose a pure offensive high-level, crushing halo. From the primary offensive halo, to the intermediate, crushing halo, and finally to the advanced, crushing halo, the Annam Protectorate's path of war was completely different from the Yuuzhan's. Moreover, unlike the Yuuzhan's halo of fortress, the Annam Protectorate's crushing halo required a lot more manpower and requirements. But for a large army that could easily have tens of thousands or even hundreds of thousands of people, this was not a problem at all. The halo of fortress and the crushing halo were two completely different types of war halos. And it was precisely by relying on the powerful crushing halo that the Annam Protectorate was able to intimidate the Yuuzhan's, causing the Yuuzhan's people to not dare to act rashly for a long time. Ever since his rebirth, building and controlling such a large army had always been Wang Chong's dream. And now, all of this had been realized. The combination of a powerful commander and powerful soldiers. For Wang Chong, he had already reached the place he had hoped to reach on this trip south. Now, it's time for my battle. Facing the storm, under Chen Shushan's puzzled gaze, Wang Chong closed his eyes and slowly opened his arms, embracing this storm and this war. In his body, a desire for battle was awakening. He felt a distant call from within his body. Rumble! The cavalry and master archers gathered much faster than Wang Chong had imagined. In a few seconds, Chen Shushan had mobilized the two armies Wang Chong needed. The difference between a proper elite army and a local reserve army was obvious. Young master, what should we do next? Chen Shushan bowed and asked. Wang Chong said nothing, his gaze sweeping over the two armies. Although the Annam Protectorate's army consisted of infantry, the military laws of the Tang dynasty required that a certain number of cavalry be stationed in each protectorate. Although they had lost a significant number in the Battle of Arai, there were still 4,000 to 5,000 cavalry on the summit. And what satisfied Wang Chong the most was that these cavalry all had sharp gazes and were brimming with energy. They looked extremely valiant, and the repeated battles had not exhausted them in the slightest. Beneath their feet, rings of great thorns halos materialized, constantly emitting metallic clangs that scattered the falling rainwater in all directions. Wang Chong counted the number of halos beneath the cavalry's feet. Each of them had at least 5 or 6 circles of halos. This meant that they were all at least at tier 5 or 6 of the true martial realm, close to the strength of the clan experts Wang Chong had recruited. You are welcome to follow my official WeChat account and Weibo. You can search for Huang Fuqi. There are many things that can't be found in novels. They truly are elites. That's more than enough. Wang Chong quietly said to himself. It was impossible for regular cavalry to have such a high cultivation level. But this battle could no longer be judged by conventional standards. Those who had survived were basically all elites. And those who were not strong enough had already died in the first wave of battle. And what satisfied Wang Chong the most was the thick killing intent and fiendish intent exuded by these cavalry. 4,000 to 5,000 cavalry were gathered together, and even the air around them seemed to distort. This was an elite troop that had truly been tempered by blood and fire, and in Wang Chong's eyes, they were the cavalry that could truly take on his mission. Soldiers with indignation will win. These cavalry are exactly the kind of soldiers with indignation mentioned in the art of war. Wang Chong inwardly sighed. At this moment, even these cavalry probably didn't know what kind of fighting strength they could display. On the battlefield, soldiers with indignation were created by the situation and not something that could be deliberately trained. The Annam Protectorate had lost nearly 100,000 soldiers to create these soldiers with indignation. As these thoughts flashed through Wang Chong's mind, he quickly turned his gaze to the master archers. There's actually 2,000 of them. Wang Chong inwardly rejoiced. The Border Protectorate army had an even greater advantage over the inland troops, and that was that they had an organized team of master archers. This team all used master archers, which required a force of several thousand jin to draw, and the dark gold thumb ring on their right thumb was their best symbol. Listen to my orders. Everyone, stand by and listen to my orders at all times. With a thought, Wang Chong quickly retracted his gaze and looked down the mountain. And as Wang Chong's gaze changed, the atmosphere on the battlefield gradually became tense. The saber-toothed tiger Jiao Sero was indeed not an ordinary person, and the commander in charge of the enemy was also not to be underestimated. The weakness that his big brother had revealed when he had fainted had been seized by the enemy, and a large number of Uzun cavalry were currently sweeping over. Even with Wang Chang's previous command, the northeast battlefront would not be able to hold out against such a huge pressure. In reality, the Uzun army had always had a huge advantage, and the Tang dynasty had always been the one under pressure. But that won't be the case anymore. A cold and harsh light flashed through Wang Chang's eyes, and his expression quickly turned cold and indifferent, becoming as hard as steel. Pass on my orders to Generals Zheng Gaoyan, Zhang Ji, and Feng Long to the north. Once they hear my order, change formation and advance at full speed from the right flank. Yes, my lord. Pass on my orders to Generals Zhao Qian, Huang He, and Fu Long to the west. Once they hear my order, change formation. Chen Shusun, who had agreed several times before, suddenly raised his head and stared at Wang Chong, his eyes wide. Given the terrain before them, choosing to use the long snake formation to disperse their forces was simply seeking death. Even on a normal battlefield, the one-line snake formation was rarely used by the regular army. Listen to my order. Give this token to him. If Generals Zhao Qian, Huang He, and Fu Long dare to resist, they will be dealt with according to military law. Wang Chong flashed the King of Song's token in his palm. I know what you're thinking. Why we're using the long snake formation? You'll naturally understand when the time comes. Wang Chong did not explain too much. After saying this, he stared motionlessly at the northeast battlefield. This was the area his big brother was in charge of, and it was also the area Wang Chong had just entered. If we want to break the stalemate, we'll have to do it this time. Wang Chong did not act rashly, nor did he issue a new order. On the battlefield, opportunities were fleeting. If they wanted to defeat Uzun and break the stalemate, they had to wait for the right opportunity. The pressure on the front lines was growing, and the formation was becoming more and more unstable. It seemed like it could be broken at any moment. If there was a breakthrough point in this battle, Uzun's people were gathering in large numbers, it would undoubtedly be here. Young master. Chen Shusun looked at the motionless figure of Wang Chong, whose back was facing him, and mentally wiped away his sweat. There were many times when he wanted to urge Wang Chong, but in the end, Chen Shusun managed to restrain himself. The eldest young master was unconscious, the other generals were locked in bitter combat, and the others were completely ignorant of the art of war and formations. If there was one person on the battlefield who understood these things, it was Wang Chong. There was no other choice. I hope that my decision is not wrong, Chen Shusun quietly said to himself, his heart filled with apprehension. This was not a simple game, nor was it a fight between a few people, nor was it a battle of blood and chi between martial artists. This was a battle that concerned the lives and deaths of tens of thousands of soldiers and the entire structure of the Southwest. He could not afford to be the slightest bit careless. But now, the arrow was knocked, and there was no turning back. 10, 9, 8, 7. Wang Chang's gaze was calm and motionless as he looked forward. At this moment, he had entered a completely tranquil state. But this was not because he had forgotten himself. On the contrary, all the activity in front of him was reflected in Wang Chang's mind like a mirror. 4, 3, 2, 1. By the time Wang Chong had counted to 1, the Uzun cavalry gathered in the northeast region had reached an astonishing density, far surpassing the other regions. Pass on my order. The northeast region is to give up resistance and retreat at full speed. All soldiers are to retreat to the summit. Young master. Chen Shusun paled in fright. All the generals had expended all their strength to stop the assault of the Uzun army. If Wang Chong were to order the army to give up their position, wouldn't this be throwing the army into disarray and wasting all their previous efforts? Quick, do as I say. Wang Chong coldly said, his voice unquestionable. Righteousness does not wield wealth, benevolence does not command troops. What a general hated the most was hesitation and hesitation. Moreover, Wang Chong had no time to explain to Chen Shusun, nor did he need to. Cavalry, master archers, get ready. Listen to my orders. Aye. Chen Shusun looked at Wang Chong's cold back and stamped his foot. Clenching his teeth, he finally waved his hand at the messenger at his side. Hiya! With the clip-clop of hooves, the messenger hurried away. Boom! When Wang Chong's order was delivered, the front line was thrown into chaos. How could this be? Why are we retreating? If we retreat, won't our other brothers be in danger? Why is Milord doing this? Bastard! Are you going to doubt Milord? Don't forget, Milord went through thick and thin with us in Lion City. But how can we retreat at a time like this? At a time like this order was like a blow to everyone. They had paid such a heavy price and lost so many people, so why would they suddenly retreat now? Wouldn't those brothers have died for nothing? In a flash, everyone turned to the Tang commander. The commander's expression warped as he mentally battled with himself. Military orders must be obeyed. All of you know General's character. At a time like this, anyone who dares to doubt General will be my enemy. Although I don't know why General is doing this, he must have a reason. The Tang commander clenched his teeth and finally made his decision. Pass on my order. Follow General's order and retreat. Rumble. With a massive boom, the soldiers in the northeast that had held out for so long suddenly collapsed. All the soldiers, including the shield men, suddenly began to retreat. Chapter 526. A good chance. Charge. These fellows can't hold on for much longer. Kill them all. Don't let them escape. General has ordered that for every Tang soldier killed, 10 cows and sheep will be rewarded. Crush them. The Annam Protectorate can't hold on for much longer. Charge. Howls, bloodthirsty, and crazed came from the Uzun cavalry. After being locked in a stalemate with the Annam Protectorate for so long, the Annam Protectorate's defenses were tenacious to the extreme. But the more they resisted, the more they roused their killing intent. The Uzun were renowned for their ferocity and bravery. The more valiant an opponent was, the more their desire to conquer would be aroused. Moreover, as old foes in this region, this was the best chance to destroy the Tang dynasty's Annam Protectorate. Rumble. There was no need for any orders, and the tens of thousands of Tibetan cavalry were like water spilling out of a dam, charging toward the summit as they did so. From a distance, the summit was where the Tang people's commander's tent was. As long as they could cut down the commander's banner, they would be able to utterly defeat them. Kill! Shouts in Uzun shook the heavens, the clattering of hooves mingling with the torrential rain. The Tibetan scimitars were as dense as a forest, and they flickered with a bloody light in the air. Go, go, go! The Tang general was constantly urging them on, his eyes so anxious that they were about to bleed. How could 2 legs outrun 4 legs? If not for the fact that the cavalry at the very front had slowed down during the battle and were moving uphill, all of them would have already lost their lives. But even so, this sort of all-out retreat would probably result in the sacrifice of many soldiers. Milord, I hope that your decision is correct. The leading Tang officer glanced at the summit, his heart dripping blood. War required sacrifices, and there was no question that he and his men were the ones to be sacrificed. But this was how war was. No matter what the truth was, he could not blame anyone. He could only hope that everything was worth it. Master archers, 500 to 600 paces ahead, fire. Wang Chong looked at the collapsing formation in the northeast, his eyes expressionless. Bang, 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 bang. As soon as the voice rang out, thousands upon thousands of arrows flew into the air like locusts and then shot down. In Ney, men and horses were thrown off their horses. One by one, the Uzun cavalrymen fell off their horses and fell to the ground. Hundreds of Uzun cavalrymen scattered in different directions fell to the ground, causing the cavalry's charge to slow down. And it was precisely because of this pause that the pressure on all the retreating Tang dynasty infantry cavalry lessened, and they suddenly fought for that slim chance of survival. Everyone rushed to the top of the mountain at full speed. Get ready. Wang Chong's face was calm as he stared at the foot of the mountain without moving. Everything was like a flower in a mirror, a moon in the water. Everything was reflected in his heart. Not a single detail could escape his eyes. Thousands upon thousands of Uzun soldiers rushed in through the gap like a tide, and they were getting closer and closer to the top of the mountain where Wang Chong was. At this distance, Wang Chong could even see the protruding veins on their heads through the rain. But Wang Chong remained unmoved. The banner above his head rustled in the rain, but his heart was calm. Time flew. It seemed that only a moment had passed, but it also seemed that countless years had passed. Suddenly, an extremely calm countdown came from the top of the mountain. 3, 2, 1. When it came to 1, Wang Chong's right hand, which was wrapped in golden armor, swung down fiercely. Tell Zheng Gaoyan, Zhang Ji, and Feng Long to be on standby. Change the formation and attack to the right. Tell Zhao Qian, Huang He, and Fu Long to prepare for the one-line snake formation. Begin! That the war horses galloped as the messengers galloped away one by one. Rumble! A moment later, just as the Uzun cavalry were about to reach the top of the mountain, the situation suddenly changed. The originally chaotic and passive Northern Army suddenly seemed to come to life. Tens of thousands of soldiers, each in a square formation, began to move like a rotating tooth. Rumble! The first change occurred at the end of the defensive line. Without any warning, an infantry suddenly thrust out diagonally. A square formation of shield-bearers, infantrymen, and axemen charged in like berserkers. Like a sharp knife, they forcefully split the Uzun cavalry in two. At almost the same time, hundreds of giant ballistae were suddenly pushed out from the darkness at the top of the mountain. Not good, it's an ambush. This is a trap. Too despicable. Kill them. Nei's horse neighed incessantly as the first wave of ballistae killed hundreds of Uzun cavalry. Outside the formation, the Uzun forces were extremely spread out, so the ballistae were not as powerful. But Wang Chong had intentionally set up this opening. In this narrow space, the Uzun, in order to pursue the deserters, had broken through the Annam Protectorate's formation and swarmed in, the groups densely packed together. Not only that, at almost the same time, the Tang soldiers on the left and right of the Uzun army began to crazily press toward the Uzun army in the center. The Uzun army had originally been suppressing the Tang soldiers in terms of numbers, but at this moment, in this pocket set up by Wang Chong, it was the Tang soldiers who had the absolute advantage in numbers. Tens of thousands of Annam Protectorate soldiers were surrounding the 8,000 or 9,000 Uzun cavalry. Quick, retreat! Break open a gap and regroup with the main army. Don't let them cut us off. Everyone follow me. In the pocket, the Uzun soldiers were not lacking in formidable commanders. Seeing that the situation was not right, they began to turn around and charge at the Tang army that had been sealed. As long as they could break through this gap and regroup with the main army, the Tang army's trap would immediately fall apart. Not only that, as long as the main army regrouped, the Tang army would only be digging their own graves. Kill them all. You bunch of trash, hurry, don't let them regroup. Hurry! Outside the pocket, the other Uzun soldiers were also panicking. The tens of thousands of Uzun cavalry had bloodshot eyes. No one had expected this sort of situation. This tactic was completely different from before. But before they could react, rumble. In the next moment, a hissing snake suddenly slithered forward and stabbed into the army. At this crucial moment, the distant armies of Zhao Qian, Huang He, and Fu Long completed their formation. The two armies overlapped, forming two sharp edges. One faced inward, resisting the desperate struggle of the Uzun army in the pocket, while the other faced outward, resisting the charge of the other Uzun soldiers. Thump, thump, thump. Boom. At this moment, the battle in the northeast suddenly reached its climax. One side wanted to rescue the trapped 8,000 or 9,000 cavalry while the other side desperately tried to stop them. Both sides were doing their utmost. Saber glows and sword glows, the neighs and screams of horses, all of this rang out in the rain. And this was not the only change in the northeast. Seeing the plight of the northeast, almost all the Uzun soldiers were rushing over to reinforce it. Kill them. They can't be allowed to succeed. On horseback, the Uzun commanders bent over, their eyes shining with a bloody light. The army that had discovered the Tang army and was pursuing them was only a vanguard of 70,000 soldiers. If the Tang people were to use this method to annihilate 1/7 of this army, it would be a heavy blow to the army. It was also hard to say what sort of punishment the great general and prime minister would receive. Go! We'll bring reinforcements. The situation was urgent. On the summit, Chen Shusan's eyes were also filled with worry. Wang Chang's tactic was completely different from the norm. Places that others would risk their lives to defend, he would abandon without hesitation. Places that others would abandon, he would persist without hesitation. Although he found this rather difficult to accept, Chen Shusan had to admit that Wang Chang's strategy was extremely effective. If they could annihilate the 8,000-strong Uzun army, it would be a massive blow to them. At the very least, they could suppress the morale of the enemy and raise the morale of their own side. Wait a moment. Just when Chen Shusan was prepared to personally set out, Wang Chong waved his hand and called him back. Wait a moment, now is not the time for you to set out. Wang Chong said calmly, not even glancing in Chen Shusan's direction. But given the current situation, we must destroy the 8,000-strong Uzun army as quickly as possible, or else chaos will ensue. Chen Shusan said anxiously. Because the eldest young master was unconscious, the northeast had originally been the weakest point of the army's defenses. But now, this situation had been completely reversed in Wang Chang's hands. Their weakness had become their strength. If things went wrong, the Uzun army would lose 8,000 or 9,000 soldiers here. Although to the Ngari Uzun royal lineage, which numbered more than 200,000, these 8,000 or 9,000 soldiers wouldn't be enough to deal a serious blow, it would still be a significant loss. At the very least, even Huishu Wuzong and Daluan Ruozun wouldn't dare say they could ignore such a large loss. Don't worry, the real battle has yet to begin. Wang Chong said indifferently, letting out a rare laugh. But in the midst of such an intense battle, not only did those who heard it not feel the slightest bit amused, they even felt an incomparably heavy feeling. At the very least, when Chen Shusan heard Wang Chang's words, his pupils involuntarily constricted. It has yet to begin. Chen Shusan glanced at the fierce battle at the foot of the mountain and compared it to the cold smile on Wang Chang's lips. Suddenly, an irresistible thought emerged in his mind, and his heart began to beat wildly. 8,000 or 9,000 Uzun soldiers. Was this sort of victory not a victory for Wang Chong? Or perhaps, did he have some other plan in mind? He had followed 2 generations of the Wang clan masters, knew everything about the Wang clan like the back of his hand, and had even hugged Wang Chong when he was young. But at this moment, Chen Shusan couldn't help but feel a sense of unfamiliarity. He had heard many rumors about Wang Chong. In the capital, he had been ignorant and incompetent, idling about, but in the regional commander's incident, he had stood up and taken responsibility, and all the other things that had happened in the capital. He had become 2 completely different people. But no matter what the rumors of the outside world said, Chen Shusan had always remembered the young Wang Chong. He wasn't good, but he wasn't bad. Although he wasn't as dazzling as the rumors made him out to be, he wasn't some ignorant and incompetent hedonist. But at this moment, as he looked at the Wang Chong before him, Chen Shusan felt both familiar and unfamiliar. None of the rumors in the capital matched up to the Wang Chong before him. This kind of calmness in command was not something a teenager could have. It wasn't just calm and composed. Wang Chong had an air of foresight and confidence that not even a veteran general with decades of service could possess. And the words "the true battle has yet to begin" made Chen Shusan feel like the youth before him was shrouded in a dense fog, making him seem unfathomable. Despite his decades in the army, his many battles, and his many encounters with famed generals, including Wang Yan and the eldest young master, he was still unable to determine Wang Chang's intentions. If Wang Chang's true goal was not the 8,000 or 9,000 Uzun soldiers trapped in the encirclement, then what was his true goal? Could it be that he had some other motive? Just what does young master want to do? Chen Shusan's gaze swept over the fierce battlefield, but he was unable to determine Wang Chang's true goal. Wang Chong paid no attention to Chen Shusan. Perhaps even if he did notice, he wouldn't think about what Chen Shusan was thinking. At this moment, all his attention was focused on the fierce battlefield. Lightning flashed and thunder rumbled in the sky, and a torrential rain poured down. It was very easy for a person to drown in this torrential rain. But tens of thousands of cavalry gathered together was a different matter. It was like a black dot the size of a speck of dust on a piece of white paper that no one would notice. However, when tens of thousands of such dust-sized black dots gathered together to form a dense drop of ink, it was not something that anyone could ignore. It's about time to begin. Wang Chong looked down the mountain at the endless stream of Uzun cavalry charging over. Everyone crazily wanted to save the 8,000 to 9,000 cavalrymen. Even cavalry from other areas had been drawn over. It was like the place where Wang Chong stood had become a fatal magnet. At this sight, the corners of Wang Chong's mouth slowly rose into an icy smile. The superior attacked the schemes while the inferior attacked the soldiers. It was quite impressive that the Uzun, who did not understand the art of war, could fight to this extent. But the art of war had never been so simple. "Ready!" Wang Chong suddenly said. These two simple words were spoken neither too loudly nor too softly, but they exploded like thunder over the summit. Chen Shu-sun and all the generals on the summit trembled. "Master archers, hear my order. Southeast, 3,500 meters in a radius of 30 zhang, concentrate your fire." After so long, this was the second time Wang Chong had issued an order. Boom boom boom. Without the slightest hesitation, Wang Chong's voice resounded over the summit as all the master archers fired their arrows. Boom, boom, boom. Accompanied by the shooting of the godly archers, a dense rain of arrows rained down from the southeast, far away from the area where the fierce battle was taking place. A group of several thousand cavalrymen just happened to be rushing over from another direction, and they crashed into the rain of arrows. Nay! The shrill whinnies of horses resounded through the mud. In the dense rain of arrows, horsemen and their horses fell to the ground, their corpses sliding through the rain. This sudden rain of arrows was completely unexpected. The cavalry in the rear were so fast that they could not dodge in time and were thrown far away amidst the neighing of their horses. The army in the rear was affected by this and instantly fell into chaos. But this was not the only change. The place Wang Chong had chosen was not only the vanguard of this army, but also the center and node of the entire Uzun army. When an army fell into chaos, it was not just itself that was obstructed, but also reinforcements from other directions. Nay! One by one, the Highland steeds stood up and neighed loudly. One after another, Uzun cavalry charged forward. In the rain, the ground was so slippery that they could not even pull on the reins to stop. In just a few moments, the chaos of a few hundred soldiers had turned into chaos of several thousand, and it was rapidly expanding. The column of cavalry in the rear had no other choice but to stop as soon as possible. And without the high-speed charge, the power of the cavalry was completely lost. More importantly, the chaos of 5,000 to 6,000 soldiers became the army's greatest weakness. How is this possible? On the summit, Chen Shusun's mind buzzed at this sight. His eyes were round and his heart was in turmoil. He had been in the army for decades and had participated in countless battles. Master archer formations were a basic requirement. Any army with tens of thousands of soldiers or more would have a specialized team of master archers. Their purpose was to kill and injure the enemy before the two armies clashed, reducing the enemy's numbers while indirectly reducing the damage to one's own side. But even after experiencing so many battles, Chen Shu-sun had never seen a general use a master archer square formation to such an extent. A single volley of arrows had caused widespread chaos in the enemy army. This had nothing to do with the number of master archers killed, but had been elevated to a strategic level. With this single step, Wang Chong had stopped tens of thousands of soldiers from advancing. On a strategic level, this was enough to influence the overall situation of the battle. Pass on my orders to Zhang Wei and Jiang Tong of Unit 17 and Unit 18. Abandon defense and attack. As expected, Wang Chong ordered the Annam Protectorate in the southeast to attack without hesitation. Rumble! At the base of the mountain, the tens of thousands of Uzun soldiers tried to take the initiative to retreat, but it was already too late. As the Tang dynasty in the southeast fiercely charged into the node of reinforcements, the Uzun army was instantly slaughtered into chaos. And unlike the Uzun cavalry in the pocket, the Uzun army at the node could neither advance nor retreat. Everyone was squeezed together and had no way of dodging. Without speed, cavalry was just infantry. And in the entire world, no infantry could compare to the Tang dynasty. Rip. In the cold rain, blood splattered everywhere and the sound of blunt objects falling to the ground could be heard. After so many years of war, the Annam Protectorate had accumulated a set of effective methods on how to deal with the thickly armored Uzun cavalry. Large axes flashed in the air, dancing a dance of death. The sharp spears were like venomous snakes spitting out their tongues, stabbing into the Highland steeds' unprotected eyes. Not only did one strike pierce through the eyes, but it also pierced into the brain. The famous Highland steeds didn't even have the time to scream before falling heavily into the mud. "It's about time, it's my turn." Gusts of wind swept the rain over. Wang Chong slowly raised his head and looked at the dark clouds above, then took a step forward. Rumble. This step shook the earth. With this step, Wang Chong finally released the bane of the battlefield, halo in his body. Ripples that were hard to see with the naked eye swept out in all directions with Wang Chong as the center. Chapter 527. Rumble. Waves of invisible ripples spread out in all directions, enveloping the entire army. By now, the range of Wang Chong's bane of the battlefield had reached an astonishing level. Moreover, the terrain of the mountains and the concentration of the army made it even more effective for Wang Chong's halo. Attention! Activate the halo! From now on, for every enemy soldier killed within the range of the halo, host's halo will grow. In a flash, a familiar voice suddenly rang in his ears. Wang Chong's lips curled into a faint smile, his face unfazed by the voice. In this period of time, Wang Chong had figured out a pattern. If he wanted to gain strength through battle, he had to become the commander-in-chief of an army, and he had to be the commander of an army that belonged entirely to him. The other method was to spread the halo. The range of the halo would weaken the strength of the enemy, equivalent to him personally participating in the battle. Thus, he could also gain strength through battle. Buzz! The Tang soldiers in battle did not sense anything, but Uzun's men immediately sensed it. What's going on? Why has my halo weakened? Damn it, why have my movements suddenly slowed down? Why do I suddenly feel like my strength has decreased? What's going on? Uzun's men had been in a state of disarray, and when they suddenly realized that their strength, speed, and dexterity had all been reduced, they panicked even more. What people feared the most was not a formidable opponent, nor was it an enemy that greatly outnumbered them, but an unknown power. Wang Chong's bane of the battlefield would not increase the strength of his own side, so his own side would not notice it. But it would weaken the enemy's strength, which was completely different from any other halo. At the very least, this sort of halo did not exist in the Tang dynasty or in the various foreign countries. Consciously, no one would have thought of this. More importantly, Wang Chong's halo did not have any particular outward appearance and was not easy to detect. And in this kind of gray rainstorm environment, there were even fewer signs to be found. Rumble. There was no time to think. With a rumble, as the Annam Protectorate took the initiative to attack, an unexpected change occurred in the entire battle. Since the start of the battle, the Annam Protectorate had the upper hand and initiative for the first time. Rumble. The army was defeated like a landslide. Looking down from the top of the mountain, they saw that the vast Uzun cavalry had clearly been cut into two, attacked from the front and rear. Wang Chong's pocket contained more than 8,000 enemy soldiers, and outside the main battlefield, where the Uzun army was gathering reinforcements from all directions, the Tang army thrust another blade in. What was even worse was that the wave of arrows that Wang Chong had directed the sharpshooters to shoot had caused chaos at the node and indirectly obstructed a large portion of the army in the rear. As a result, even though the Uzun cavalry had an astonishing number of cavalry, they were unable to unleash their full power when they were blocked by the front. Nay! The war horses roared, and the Highland steeds fell to the ground, neighing miserably. The axemen in the Tang army were often able to chop down these highland steeds with a single swing of their axes. Another Uzun soldier swung his blade, but he was sent flying by a single punch from another Tang soldier. In terms of individual strength, the Tang army was unstoppable, unable to withstand even a single blow. For some reason, the valiant and ferocious Uzun soldiers seemed to have suddenly dropped in strength. Unbelievable! When did I become so strong? A soldier with a shield stared at his own fist in shock. In all his years of fighting in Lion City, he had never seen an Uzun soldier fall from his horse with a single punch. Haha, the Uzun soldiers are only SOSO. A spearman watched as his spear pierced through a chink in his opponent's armor, the tip of the spear emerging from his horse's head and stabbing into his opponent's neck. He didn't understand what had just happened, but the usually fast and nimble Uzun soldiers had suddenly slowed down. The spearman could only watch as his opponent's scimitar brushed past him by half a step, allowing his spear to pierce through his opponent's body. No matter what had happened, there was no doubt that he had succeeded. Similar things were happening all over the battlefield. The strength of the Annam Protectorate and the Uzun soldiers had originally been about the same, but at this moment, the Annam Protectorate had clearly gained the upper hand and was suppressing their enemy. Ah, brothers, kill! The time for our Annam Protectorate to take revenge has come. Kill! Battle cries resounded through the world. The gloominess of the Annam Protectorate was swept away, and everyone's spirits were roused. The soldiers with shields, sabers, axes, and spears all advanced in unison. Something's wrong. The Tang army had not yet sensed anything, but the Uzun generals immediately sensed it. Amidst the vast army of Uzun cavalry, a strong-looking general with bright eyes widened as he subconsciously looked toward the summit. Wang Chang's bane of the battlefield had not only affected the northeast region, but the entire battlefield. In that moment, he could clearly sense that the strength of his subordinates had greatly weakened. But Wang Chang's bane of the battlefield had no effect on generals, so not even he could determine what had happened. What's going on here? What's going on? His bright eyes swept across the battlefield and scanned one round. Finally, he quickly swept his gaze across the battlefield in the northeast region. Logically speaking, with so many soldiers concentrated in the northeast region, the Tang army should have the absolute advantage, but in reality, the Tang army was the one with the advantage. This situation was not normal. Parry! With a cold glint in his eyes, the Uzun general suddenly turned his horse around and galloped toward the northeast. Southeast region, left wing, 4,500 meters, right wing, 1,800 steps, fire. At the same time, on the summit of the northeast region, Wang Chong, clad in golden armor, stood beneath a flagpole, his voice cold and emotionless. Bang bang bang. With Wang Chang's order, 2 volleys of arrows, like the eyes of a death god, landed on the left wing and right wing respectively at a distance of 4,500 meters and 1,800 meters respectively. Rumble. With the neighing of horses on the verge of death, the Uzun soldiers who had been on the verge of forming an orderly formation once more fell into chaos. Wang Chong towered over the summit, his gaze like that of a hawk sweeping over the battlefield. Not a single movement could escape his eyes. In his hands, the Master Archer Army, a necessity for any army, had displayed a strategic might. At this point, it was no longer important how many people the Master Archer Army killed. They had become a strategic weapon. As long as there was a threat, Wang Chong would disrupt them in advance. In the art of war, the ultimate goal was to confuse the enemy, confuse them, weaken them, and do their best to create a situation in which they outnumbered the enemy. And right now, the Tang army in the northeast region was in this state. The Uzun soldiers, who clearly had the advantage in numbers, had suddenly become the minority. Wang Chong had used their own chaos to build an invisible high wall among the enemy army, a high wall to block their own people from the rear. Batch after batch of Uzun soldiers screamed as they fell to the sabers and axes of the Tang army. In Wang Chong's mind, all sorts of voices were ringing out like a waterfall. One voice after another roared out of Wang Chong's mind, constantly announcing the casualties of the Uzun soldiers. This was not an even increase, but an exponential one. In a short period of time, the casualties of the Uzun soldiers reached an astonishing rate. The wind howled on the mountaintop. With each death of an Uzun soldier, a stream of energy poured into Wang Chong's body from the surrounding void. Wang Chong had already reached Tier 9 of the true martial realm, but now he was showing signs of advancing toward the peak of Tier 9. If he advanced further, all the halos would merge into one, forming a large halo of thorns. That would be the profound martial realm. Incredible, incredible! On the mountaintop, Qin Shu Sun and the other generals were filled with excitement, completely stunned by this scene. Although they were not like Wang Chong, who could know the casualties of the Uzun soldiers at any time, looking down from the mountaintop, they could completely see what was happening on the battlefield. Defeat was like a landslide. That was exactly what was happening on the battlefield. Although the Uzun had the advantage in numbers, they were no match for the Annam Protectorate. In the pocket that Wang Chong had set up, large numbers of Uzun soldiers were falling like harvested straws. On the other side of the battlefield, the Annam Protectorate was like a sharp sword stabbing straight into the heart of the enemy, making it impossible for the enemy to stop it. If the Uzun could be described as a vast ocean, then the Annam Protectorate was a rock in that vast ocean. Although it appeared to be the weaker side, it was in fact the one with the upper hand. Great, this is great. Qin Shu Sun clenched his fists, his face flushed with excitement. Even the other guards and generals around the flagpole looked at Wang Chong with completely different expressions. When Wang Chong had first taken over the army, everyone had been skeptical, including Qin Shu Sun. But at this moment, looking at the battle at the foot of the mountain, there was no longer any doubt. I really didn't expect the young master to be so accomplished in the art of war. Even if the eldest young master were here, awake, he would still be far inferior. The army is saved. Qin Shu Sun was overjoyed. Chapter 528. Cavalry, get ready. Wang Chong didn't even notice what was going on behind him. His mind was extremely calm and farsighted. This battle had now reached its most critical moment. The Annam Protectorate had the initiative, and Wang Chong was using his master archers to control the situation. But the Uzun army had not given up. As long as they could repel this final wave of resistance, the 70,000 Uzun soldiers would be utterly routed. And it would be a landslide defeat. Nay! All the cavalry gathered at Wang Chong's side, all of them looking down the mountain, their bodies exuding a fierce will to fight. This battle involved 3 empires and nearly 1 million soldiers. For the first time, they saw a sliver of hope. To these exhausted soldiers who had been fighting for days, this sliver of hope was extremely important. The summit was quiet. Other than the sound of the rain and the flapping of the banners, there was no other sound. The atmosphere was frighteningly quiet. Everyone was waiting for Wang Chong's order. No one realized that from their initial doubts and unease, they had now developed an absolute trust in Wang Chong. Come out, come out. I don't believe that you won't take action. Wang Chong quietly said to himself as he looked down the mountain. The Ziffadan Jiao Sero was one of the 5 tiger generals of the Uzun Empire's Ngari royal lineage, and there was also the crown prince of Mengxi Zhao, Fenjie. These were all dazzling individuals who could not be underestimated. In the Southwestern War, although these people were not as dazzling as Daluan Ruozhen, Huoshu Wuzong, or Jelifeng, they had all played an equally important role. One could say that the Annam Protectorate's crushing defeat was directly related to them. Wang Chong didn't believe that Fenjie and Jiao Sero wouldn't react to his single-handedly orchestrating the northeastern battlefield. The Uzun army was utterly routed. A general needed to look at the overall situation. If Fenjie and Jiao Sero couldn't even do this, then he would be overestimating them. Let's see when you'll react. Wang Chong thought to himself. Thunder rumbled and lightning flashed. Wang Chong did not have to wait for long. Suddenly, the earth and sky shook in the southeast direction. The dense sound of horse hooves even drowned out the sound of the storm. The neighing of the Highland steed could be heard even in the storm and thunder. Kill. A series of deafening battle cries came from afar. In the blink of an eye, waves of cavalry, whose aura and strength far surpassed that of ordinary Uzun soldiers, galloped towards them with a terrifying aura. The general has ordered that those who kill the enemy will live, and those who retreat will die." A white rainbow flashed, and a ferocious-looking herald rushed out of the gray rainstorm with a machete in his hand. His voice was incomparably tyrannical as he said, "Imperial Guard, hear my order. Anyone who retreats will be executed." The reply to the messenger was a heaven-shaking roar, brimming with bestial savagery. One by one, the powerful and muscular Uzun Imperial Guard dismounted from their horses, pulled out their scimitars, and lined them up in a row, the tips of their blades aimed at the summit. So many cavalry, even though they were outnumbered, had been thrown into complete chaos. Each one of them was like a headless fly, unable to advance or retreat. To the Uzun who revered bravery, this was a complete humiliation. Almost at the same time that all the Imperial Guard dismounted, a new wave of Uzun reinforcements transformed into a surging flood that charged toward the summit. Not good, it's dangerous. On the summit, beneath the giant banner, Chen Shusan's expression tightened, revealing a nervous expression. Although his grasp of the art of war was inferior to Wang Chong's, Chen Shusan was still a veteran of the battlefield. Although the Tang army had the initiative on the battlefield, this was the result of Wang Chong's use of various tactics and formations. But even the most powerful tactics and formations had a limit to what they could endure. There was no question that the Tang square formations that were on the offensive had already reached their limits. If another wave of 8,000 to 9,000 elites came, it was very likely that the front line would collapse due to the pressure. "There's no need to worry." Wang Chong flicked his wrist, unconcerned. "Have them charge over." "But, milord, we won't be able to hold on like this." Several Tang generals at the side said. Wang Chong wasn't familiar with any of these people, but he knew that they were his big brother's guards. "There's no need to worry. As long as we don't immediately collapse, it won't matter," Wang Chong calmly said. Wang Chong made no attempt to stop this wave. As expected, the scene that everyone on the summit had been most worried about occurred. Rumble. Like a flash flood, the vast army of Uzun reinforcements burst like a silver bottle, smashing into the Tang formation and causing a massive upheaval. A blood-curdling scream resounded in the void. Outside the pocket that Wang Chong had laid down, the two Tang armies that had taken the initiative were gradually beginning to show signs of being unable to hold on. 10. 8. Wang Chong calmly looked down the mountain, his mind ringing with the sound of a countdown. Looking down from the summit, Wang Chong could clearly see that as the battle progressed, the attention of this final group of reinforcements was completely focused on the two Tang camps that were charging down the mountain. Everyone was doing their utmost to charge forward, paying little attention to the people on the summit. And as the battle intensified, this trend became more and more obvious. 4, 3, 2, 1. When the count reached 1, the ranks of the Uzun reinforcements suddenly rippled. This ripple was not very obvious, like a bubble in a stream, but to Wang Chong, this was enough. To the southeast, cavalry, charge. After waiting for so long, Wang Chong had finally dispatched the cavalry that he had been saving for so long, the cavalry stationed on the summit. Rumble. It was earth-shattering. The cavalry camp on the mountain peak had been waiting for this order for a long time. Now that they had suddenly received the order, the cavalrymen were practically fighting to be the first to leap down from the top of the mountain like a rapid waterfall. Neigh. The neighing of the cavalry and the humming of metal mixed together. In just a short period of time, the cavalry had reached an extremely high speed. As this cavalry charged forward, no one noticed that at the base of the summit, beneath the flapping banner, Wang Chong's eyes flashed as he suddenly took a step forward. Bang! The bright cry of a horse came from the depths of space and time. The faint image of a massive and extraordinary warhorse appeared behind Wang Chong, and at the same time, a halo of fire shot out from Wang Chong's feet, rapidly spreading to cover the feet of all the cavalry. The cavalry of the Annan Protectorate had already reached an extremely high speed, and now that they were suddenly boosted by the halo of Dusk Stallion, their speed instantly skyrocketed. In the blink of an eye, they had reached a peak speed. Rumble. 4,000 men and horses rushed down from the top of the mountain like a flash flood. Their momentum was unstoppable and unstoppable. Not good. There's another Tang at the summit. Take up the formation, take up the formation. It's cavalry. Watch out for the cavalry charge. The sudden change at the top of the mountain alarmed all the reinforcements in the gray curtain of rain. Looking at the furious army charging over, everyone's eyes revealed a look of shock. In the torrential rain, the view from the base of the mountain was not as good. No one had expected that the Annam Protectorate would still have an army that it had not mobilized. And this was the most powerful and terrifying cavalry force in this terrain. An army of 4,000 against the 8 or 9,000 new Uzun reinforcements. This force was enough to influence the outcome of this important battle. Take up the formation. Take up the formation. The Uzun general madly kicked and lashed at the soldiers around him in an attempt to reorganize the formation. But it was too late. Everyone's attention was focused on the Tang army charging at them, intending to madly crush them. This also meant that they had lost the ability to adapt to the situation and take up the formation. Boom! Before these people could react, the 4,000 cavalry had passed through the gaps in the army's formation like water leaking through a dam, smashing into the ranks of the new Uzun reinforcements. No one could stop this terrifying collision. The Tang soldiers who had survived were essentially the elite of the elite. Coupled with the force of the charge from their warhorses, the charge from each Tang dynasty cavalry was equivalent to the full-strength attack of a true martial Tier 7 expert. This was not a force that ordinary Uzun cavalry could easily block. Cavalry had become an important deterrent on the battlefield precisely because of the combined strength of man and warhorse. In the hands of Wang Chong, this force of impact was pushed to its pinnacle. Ugh. With a scream, an Uzun cavalryman and his horse were thrown several dozen zhang into the air. The others were also completely unable to endure this force. Bang bang bang. In the blink of an eye, hundreds of Uzun soldiers were thrown into the air. The sounds of tendons snapping, bones breaking, horses neighing, metal clanging, halos clanging, collisions, all of it blended into one. Kaio! Their battle cries resounded through the clouds, and all the great Tang cavalrymen revealed savage killing intent. In this melee, the newly appeared Uzun cavalry had fallen into complete chaos. Ugh! Stop them! Stop them! We can't stop them, we can't stop them. There are too many of them. It's bad, Milord has been killed in battle. The counterattack that the Uzun army had worked so hard to build up instantly collapsed. Even the Tang assault line that had been on the verge of breaking had been completely ruined. As this battle continued, the Uzun army had suddenly fallen into an unprecedented situation. The pocket, the middle of the reinforcements, and the rear had all collapsed. Not only had this pursuit of the Tang deserters failed to achieve any results, nearly 10,000 soldiers had died in battle, and the Tang army had also fallen into an extremely disadvantageous position. Damn it! Just what's going on here? This person definitely isn't Wang Fu. On the mountain, an Uzun officer stared at the banner on the summit, his eyes red as he furiously cursed. In the entire southwest, including the Annam Protectorate, the only person that could pose a slight threat to the Uzun army was the Wang clan's Wang Fu. Even Lords Huoshu Wuzong and Daluan Ruozhen had to sigh in praise of that person's talent. However, even if it was Wang Fu, it was impossible for him to have such terrifying leadership and commanding abilities. In just a few moments, the situation on the battlefield had been reversed. Such a situation was simply unprecedented, and it could even be called a miracle. At the very least, from the Uzun side, this was completely unimaginable. And when one considered that the Uzun army had an absolute advantage in numbers, this was even more difficult to accept. But regardless of whether the Uzun people could accept it or not, the Northeast and the Northeast were currently experiencing a complete rout of the Uzun army, and this trend was spreading from the Northeast and Southeast to the other regions. Congratulations to user for killing 13,961 Uzun soldiers. Congratulations to user for killing 16,733 Uzun soldiers. Congratulations to user for killing 19,927 Uzun soldiers. Congratulations to user for killing 21,966 Uzun soldiers. Congratulations to user for killing 23,459 Uzun soldiers. Congratulations to user for killing 26,796 Uzun soldiers. Wang Chong stood motionless on the mountain peak, a series of voices pouring down from his mind like a waterfall. The power and range of Wang Chong's bane of the battlefield halo kept increasing, and Wang Chong's already high strength, under the influence of the Uzun soldiers who had died in battle, grew again. The battlefield was the best place to train, and also the best place to increase one's strength. At least at this moment, this was what Wang Chong felt. Boom, boom, boom. The power of the halos vibrated in his body, surging, and showing signs of fusing. In the darkness, a strange feeling welled up in his heart, and Wang Chong felt as if he had touched some hidden, indescribable power in the depths of time and space. This feeling was both strange and familiar. Chapter 529. Waves of power surged through his body, and Wang Chong felt an unprecedented sense of freedom. This was war. Although the Stone of Destiny could not give him great power immediately, it was born for war. He was the war saint. Only war could bring him the greatest power. In that instant, Wang Chong's mind was clear. Attack on all fronts. Looking at the chaotic Uzun army, this time, Wang Chong did not use any tactics or strategies. Instead, he directly gave the order for an all-out attack. The Uzun had already been defeated. An army in chaos could no longer pose a threat to the Tang dynasty. What Wang Chong needed to do was to attack on all fronts and put a lot of pressure on this army. Let them be completely annihilated and suffer a crushing defeat. Rumble. When Wang Chong gave the order, the northeast and southeast regions instantly gave up on defense and charged forward like an avalanche. Shield soldiers, axe soldiers, spear soldiers, all kinds of soldiers charged forward. Ah! Cries of pain rang out incessantly. One warhorse after another fell to the ground. Both the southeast and northeast regions were completely routed. Congratulations, host, for killing 31,977 Uzun soldiers. Congratulations, host, for killing 33,455 Uzun soldiers. Congratulations, host, for killing 36,703 Uzun soldiers. Congratulations, host, for killing 39,911 Uzun soldiers. In a short period of time, a series of messages surged out of Wang Chong's mind like a rolling snowball. When the Annam Protectorate pressed forward, coupled with Wang Chong's bane of the battlefield, aura, the Uzun army was truly defeated. The number of casualties increased exponentially. In the depths of space-time, strands of energy as thin as gossamer swarmed over. Success. Wang Chong's robes fluttered in the wind. He clenched his fists and spread his arms. His heart was incomparably agitated. The total number of Uzun's men was only about 70,000 to 80,000. He had killed so many people in the southeast and northeast regions, and they were in a complete defeat. They could no longer pose a threat to him. Damn it! Suddenly, a voice filled with murderous intent and anger exploded like a clap of thunder on the mountaintop. The voice was clearly far away, but it sounded as if it was right beside his ear. Rumble. Wang Chong's heart trembled. Before he could react, he heard a loud explosion coming from the foot of the mountain. Amidst the violent explosion, a powerful force shot out in all directions. On the mountainside, where the Annam Protectorate's attack was the fiercest, and also the place where the Uzun suffered the most casualties, a huge force suddenly exploded. Dozens of Tang Dynasty's cavalrymen who were charging screamed in pain. Like kites with their strings cut, they were sent flying with their horses. With just this, a huge gap suddenly appeared in the tight formation of the Annam Protectorate. This is... Wang Chong's eyelids twitched. In a flash, in that gap, Wang Chong vaguely saw a tall figure with disheveled hair, bulging muscles, and a body full of wildness. The figure glared at him from afar. That gaze was extremely cold, filled with murderous intent and killing intent. It chilled people to the bone. However, It only lasted for a moment before the figure disappeared. It was so fast that people thought it was an illusion. Roar! In the next moment, the wind howled, and an earth-shattering roar of a tiger rang in everyone's ears. Right at the gap in the army that had been torn open, space warped as the image of a white tiger that was the size of a small mountain faintly appeared, and a primitive, ancient, brutal, and ferocious aura surged out and flowed wantonly. It's not a shadow. As the four paws landed on the ground, a 3 zhang tall, 6 zhang long, and incomparably ferocious white tiger suddenly appeared in the Annam Protectorate's army. The white tiger's muscles bulged, and every muscle seemed to be filled with endless destructive power. A huge and magnificent halo of thorns shone under the feet of the white tiger. It complemented the metal totem on its back, as well as the mysterious runes. They resonated with each other, giving people a primitive, ancient, and incomparably mysterious feeling. Roar! With a cold gaze, the white tiger locked onto the mountaintop. With a swipe of its paws, 5 or 6 Tang Dynasty cavalrymen flew far away as if they were nothing, and fell to the ground with a thud. With another casual swipe of the tiger's tail, the entire formation completely collapsed. Not good, it's the Zifidon Jiao Sero. Suddenly, a solemn voice rang in everyone's ears. Chen Shusun drew his long saber and stepped in front of Wang Chong, as if he was facing a great enemy. Clang, clang, clang. Almost at the same time, the guards on the mountaintop all drew their long sabers and swords, lined up in formation, and stood in front of Wang Chong with solemn expressions. The duty of the guards was to protect the general. This was why they did not participate in the battle. Compared to the loss of a single soldier, the safety of the general was more important. Roar! A series of loud roars resounded through the mountain peak. The rain and mist spread out in waves and exploded. Even the entire mountain range trembled under the roars of the tiger. Countless rocks and mud slid down from the top of the mountain. Kill! The Lord is here. Follow the general. Kill! Halfway up the mountain, the effects of Jiao Sero's attack were immediate. The morale of the Uzun soldiers had already hit rock bottom, and the terrain was extremely disadvantageous to them. But at this moment, it was like they had been given a shot of adrenaline. Roaring, they followed behind Jiao Sero and began to counterattack. The strength of a profound martial realm expert was unimaginable. Jiao Sero had transformed into a white tiger and was charging straight up the mountain. Wherever he passed, he left behind a trail of destruction, and the Uzun cavalry following closely behind him were able to maximize this result. A gap of 4 to 5 zhang wide had suddenly become a fatal flaw in the southeast and northeast regions. The situation had suddenly turned against the Tang army. "Milord, what do we do? If this continues, our entire army will be routed and victory will be turned into defeat. We should first consider Milord's safety. Jiao Sero is too fast. He's coming for Milord. If something happens to Milord, the morale of the army will crumble and our defeat will be assured." The massive white tiger's charge was simply too fast. In just a few moments, several hundred Tang soldiers had been slapped or thrown away, all of them either dead or injured. Even though they were observing from the summit, they were still alarmed. Even more frightening was that Jiao Sero's target was clearly them, the summit. Everyone felt a sense of crisis. It was the aura of death. "Young master?" Chen Shusun said nothing, only looked inquiringly at Wang Chong. As a general, Wang Chong naturally could not retreat. If the commander-in-chief retreated, the army would collapse without a fight, and there would be no need for Jiao Sero to do anything. And if he remained on the summit, he would be in grave danger. Moreover, as a subordinate of 2 generations of the Wang clan, Chen Shusun had a deep friendship with the Wang clan. He loved the house and its crow, so he did not wish for anything to happen to Wang Chong. "There's no need." A light flickered in Wang Chong's eyes, but he quickly waved his hand. "If the army collapses, we will also die. In addition, even if we can't kill him, we don't have to risk our lives. This is not what I'm worried about right now. All of you, pay attention to your surroundings. Since Jiao Sero has appeared, Fenjie is definitely not far away. We need to be careful of this person." These words caused everyone's expressions to change, and Chen Shusan's heart sank to the bottom of a lake. One Jiao Sero was already hard enough to deal with, and now with Fenjie, who would be a match? Chen Shusun had originally wanted to hold his ground, but now, Chen Shusun was thinking of retreating. This was no longer a question of holding their ground, but a question of waiting for death if they stayed. Young master, if that's the case, we might have to retreat. Chen Shusun said with an ugly expression. There's no need for that right now. Did you forget that Jiao Sero and Fenjie were originally with my father? There's no way father wouldn't have noticed Jiao Sero's sudden disappearance. Uncle Chen, send the signal for the drummers to beat the drums. In addition, arrange for the ballisti to come over. Wang Chong waved his hand and confidently ordered. Once the two armies engaged in a melee, ballisti would essentially lose their purpose. But at this time, they were still useful to deal with a powerful foe like Jiao Sero. Moreover, the white tiger's massive size made it even more convenient to use. In the blink of an eye, while Wang Chong was speaking, the battle at the base of the mountain had reached a critical juncture. Boom boom boom. The northeast line had been thrown into disarray by Jiao Sero, but at the same time, everyone had discovered Jiao Sero's goal. He had made no attempt to conceal his goal. He was advancing in a straight line, and any Tang soldiers blocking his path were plowed away. Protect milord. Even if we die, don't let him approach the summit. Everyone hear my order. Anyone who retreats will die. In the army, the eyes of all the commanders were red with anxiety. If the commander-in-chief was killed and the banner was cut, the entire army would collapse. This was no longer a matter of protecting Wang Chong alone. Given the current situation of the Annam Protectorate, if it really reached this stage, there was basically no chance of survival. The Southwest will be the final resting place for all of us. Square 6 and Square 7, retreat. Turtle shell formation. Passively defend. Master archers, fire at will. After 3 waves, retreat to the southwest. Wang Chong suddenly said. The master archers were not particularly skilled in close combat. If Jiao Sero were allowed to charge to the summit, the master archers would truly be lambs waiting to be slaughtered. A large number of them would be easily slaughtered. Boom boom boom. A dense rain of arrows howled through the air. Even in this chaotic battle, the master archers were completely unaffected. None of their arrows missed their target. But in the next moment, something unexpected occurred. Bang bang bang. The rain of arrows was still several zhang away from the 3 zhang tall white tiger when they stopped in midair, as if there was an invisible wall of air. Regardless of whether you are Wang Fu or not, regardless of who you are, you want to use this method to deal with me? You're too childish. Chapter 530. 1. Before the surrounding people could react, the white tiger suddenly shook its body. Peng, peng, peng. Hundreds and thousands of iron arrows suddenly shot out in all directions like the thorns of a hedgehog. Not good. Wang Chong's heart skipped a beat. Before he could react, he heard a boom, followed by screams. With Jiao Sero at the center, all the infantry in a radius of several dozen paces were sent flying by the dense rain of arrows. Even though they were protected by armor, they were still either dead or wounded. The dense rain of arrows had actually become the best tool for Jiao Sero to display its might. Scatter! Master archers, retreat immediately! Wang Chong's expression focused as he waved his left palm and gave the order. The master archers could deal with ordinary Uzun soldiers, but against a fierce Uzun general like Jiao Sero, they were clearly lacking. Moreover, Wang Chong could sense from this scene that Jiao Sero's stellar energy was even more powerful and ferocious than Bashishing's. His Jinqi was so dense that it could reflect the rain of arrows. This was not something an ordinary profound martial realm expert could do. There was a reason why Jiao Sero was ranked second among the 5 tiger generals. Roar! With a savage roar, the massive white tiger stared at Wang Chong, a hint of ridicule in its eyes. Boom! With a shake of its 4 claws, the massive white tiger suddenly leaped into the air. Boom! Seeing this scene, the surrounding crowd was in chaos. No matter how slow they could tell that this white tiger was charging at Wang Chong. "Protect milord!" Shouts came from all around, but Wang Chong was the only one who remained calm. "Umph." Wang Chong waved his right hand. Gazing at the leaping white tiger, he immediately gave the order to attack. "Fire!" Boom boom boom. Following Wang Chong's order, the ballista phalanx began to fire 3-meter-long bolts. Jiao Sero, who had transformed into a white tiger, soared into the sky and positioned himself in the air. It was the best angle and timing to shoot. No matter how powerful Jiao Sero was, it would be difficult for him to shift under such circumstances. How could Wang Chong let go of such an opportunity? How foolish! Wang Chong sneered in his heart. In a large-scale, crowded war, even the most powerful cultivator could think of a way to deal with it. Jia Siluo was being a little too arrogant. Buzz! The air exploded, and 20 to 30 arrows were aimed at Jiao Sero, who was in the air. In terms of accuracy and angle, these well-trained soldiers of the Annan Protectorate Army would have no problem with it. Even Jia Siluo slightly paled at the sight of those flashing arrowheads and the terrifying energy contained within them. Bzzz. There was no time to think. A majestic stellar energy barrier, 7 or 8 feet thick, burst out of Jiao Sero's body and tightly wrapped around the white tiger. Just as he was about to complete this step, the 30-some ballistae all struck the white tiger in the air. Roar! With a roar, the huge white tiger's body staggered as it was shot down from the sky. It crashed onto the ground, causing mud to splatter all over the sky. "Brat, I underestimated you." That resonant voice resounded through the air, this time with more gravity and less disdain. There was no doubt that Jiao Sero had suffered a bit in that moment. The white tiger's massive claws slashed across the ground, causing mud and gravel to fly everywhere, blurring its vision. Then, it suddenly pounced forward. This time, the white tiger didn't choose to charge in a straight line. Instead, it dove left and right, choosing an S-shaped path. The ballista bolts all landed behind it. Although it had chosen an S-shaped path, Jiao Sero's speed didn't decrease. Instead, it increased. In a short period of time, it was less than 100 feet from the top of the mountain. With Jiao Sero's speed, it would probably reach the top of the mountain in the next moment. At this moment, even Wang Chong's expression changed. Once a profound martial realm expert got serious, they would be extremely difficult to deal with. Moreover, Jiao Sero had clearly used the secret techniques of the Great Snow Mountain Temple. "Uncle Chen, the rest is up to you," Wang Chong said calmly. A battle between martial cultivators had nothing to do with tactics or strategy. Against an expert like Jiao Sero, even Wang Chong didn't have any good ideas. The only person on the mountain who could deal with him was Chen Shusun. As a veteran general of the army, Chen Shusun's strength was unquestionable. "Protect milord!" The cry of a saber echoed through the air. Rainwater flowed down his forehead and down his hair, but Chen Shusun's eyes didn't waver in the slightest. Boom! Chen Shusun's feet paused on the mountain peak. He became one with his saber, instantly transforming into a white rainbow that pierced through the heavy rain and slashed at the nearby Jiao Sero. "Protect milord!" At almost the same time, the guards on the mountain peak unsheathed their sabers and followed Chen Shusun, charging at Jiao Sero. It was their duty to protect the commander of the army. The reason they hadn't come out to battle was because they were waiting for this moment. Boom boom boom. Heaven-shaking explosions came from the base of the mountain as Chen Shusun and Jia Siluo began to battle. Both of them were experts of the profound martial realm, and every move they made contained immense power. Their power was so great that the torrential rain couldn't even get within 7 or 8 meters of the two. At the same time, the rain transformed into ripples that spread in all directions. Welcome to my official WeChat account and Weibo. Just search for Huang Fuqi. There's a lot of content that can't be found in novels. Jiao Sero is too powerful. Wang Chong frowned as he looked at the foot of the mountain. Although Chen Shusun had made a move, he had only barely managed to stop Jiao Sero for a moment. Even with the help of his eldest brother Wang Fu's guards, they were still no match for Jiao Sero. They were completely suppressed by Jiao Sero. At least, that was how Wang Chong saw it. The martial arts of the Great Snow Mountain Temple are indeed powerful. Although Jiao Sero has grown in size and is more vulnerable to attacks from all sides, his white tiger form is almost invulnerable and has immense strength. Furthermore, his movements are completely unaffected. After all, Uncle Chen hasn't learned these martial arts. He can't stop him at all. Wang Chong's mind was in turmoil. In just a short period of time, Uncle Chen's body had already suffered several scratches. Blood flowed endlessly from the white tiger's sharp claws. Wang Chong didn't know much about the Great Snow Mountain Temple, so he didn't pay much attention to this. "Milord, do you want me and my brothers to go help him? I'm afraid he won't be able to hold on by himself." Suddenly, a familiar voice came from beside him. The eagle looked down the mountain, his voice tinged with anxiety. The eagle arrived at the top of the mountain a little later than Wang Chong. Unlike Wang Chong, the eagle spent a lot of time helping to set up the defense line and fend off Uzin's men. As for when they reached the top of the mountain, the eagle knew his own limitations. He knew nothing about the art of war or strategy, so he simply led the elites of the Black Dragon Gang and waited silently on the side, not saying a word. "No need." Wang Chong raised an arm and said calmly, "Jiao Sero is not the only threat this time. Jiao Sero is easy to deal with. After all, everything about him is out in the open, but the other one might not be the same." "Milord is speaking of Fenjie?" the eagle said. He had also heard some of it from the side. He had also heard of Fenjie's matter in the past, but he hadn't paid much attention to it. Wang Chong nodded non-committally. The art of war revolves around what is real and what is false. Fenjie stayed in the Tang dynasty for a very long time and has learned quite a bit about the art of deception. After fighting for so long, I don't believe that he hasn't appeared yet. The art of deception? A strange light flashed through the eagle's eyes. He really didn't understand much about the art of war. Wang Chong only smiled and said nothing more. Wang Chong had only heard of this Crown Prince Meng Shizhao, but had never seen him in person. He had no idea what kind of person he was. However, the fact that Fenjie hadn't appeared for so long actually allowed Wang Chong to learn a few things. This Fenjie was definitely not an easy character to deal with. He was patient, and most importantly, his personality was one that would take a life when he didn't act. He was truly a very difficult opponent to deal with. And as the Crown Prince, he could mobilize a great deal of resources, but at the same time, he didn't have the arrogance of a Crown Prince. Wang Chong could sense that this sort of person was definitely the type of person who would use any means necessary to achieve his goal. Compared to the unstoppable Jiao Sero who could charge to the summit at any moment and take his life, Wang Chong actually felt that this Fenjie was the true calamity of the Tang dynasty. "Milord, if he doesn't appear, are we just going to keep standing here? The current situation isn't in our favor," a dark-faced elite of the Black Dragon Gang said. They had all been left by Li Sai at Wang Chong's side. Although they didn't admire Wang Chong as much as Li Sai, they still respected him. In their view, Wang Chong really shouldn't have transferred away Li Sai in this battle. Otherwise, with General Li present, they might have been able to stop Jiao Sero. They would have been much more flexible in adapting to the situation. "That's right, milord. If Jiao Sero attacks, Fenjie will cooperate from the side, and I'll be in the open while the enemy is in the shadows. When the time comes, I'm afraid we won't be able to stop him," another elite of the Black Dragon Gang said, his voice tinged with deep concern. Wang Chong turned his head in astonishment and saw that the Black Dragon Gang elite who had spoken had a thin build. He was completely different from the others, and his eyes seemed to be more intelligent. So it's him. This thought flashed through Wang Chong's mind. He had a vague idea of who this person was. Li Sai had said that this person was half an advisor in the Black Dragon Gang. Although he wasn't at the level of a strategist, he still had some intelligence. "Relax, he won't have that chance. I'll have him come out on his own." Chapter 5:31. Although Fenjie had yet to show himself, there was one thing that he had guessed correctly. The reason Fenjie hadn't shown himself yet was precisely because of this. Wang Chong was even certain that Fenjie was currently hiding among the Uzun cavalry behind Jiao Sero. "Young master, what do you mean?" A hint of astonishment appeared in Eagle's eyes. A figure like Fenjie was already well known among the people back then, and in a place like the capital at that. Since he didn't want to come out, no one could force him. Eagle really couldn't understand how Wang Chong was going to force him out. Wang Chong didn't say anything, instead using his actions to answer the question. "Kacha." With the sound of splintering wood, Wang Chong suddenly unsheathed his sword and cut through the thick banner on the summit. No one had expected such a sight. Even old Eagle's entire body was trembling in shock. No matter how ignorant he was or how little he understood about the army, he knew that the banner represented the morale of the army. If the banner was there, the morale of the army would be there. If the banner was broken, it would mean that the enemy had reached the center of the army, dealing a devastating blow to the morale of the army. No one had expected Wang Chong's move. "Young master?" Eagle's eyes widened, his heart going cold. Too stunned. Too sudden. For a moment, Eagle's mind was blank. But Wang Chong's actions were never something that could be easily predicted. Bang! A young and powerful arm firmly held onto the huge flagpole, not letting it fall at all. "Everyone listen to my order. We can't stay on the summit any longer. The banner is more important. We will take the banner and retreat to another place." Wang Chong loudly shouted. As he spoke, Wang Chong stepped back, stirring up a cloud of mud. Without another word, he raised the banner and began to retreat. "Dream on. If you want to take the banner away, then leave your life behind." Just when Wang Chong was preparing for a tactical retreat, a cold and quiet voice, tinged with a hint of lofty arrogance, came from the crowd like a crane in a flock of chickens. Before anyone could react, boom! A mist of rain suddenly sprayed towards the people on the mountaintop. The misty rain completely obscured the vision of Wang Chong, the eagle, and the others. Clang! An almost inaudible cry of a sword rang out from behind the misty rain, like a dragon emerging from the abyss. In that instant, Wang Chong, the eagle, the elites of the Black Dragon Gang, and everyone else on the mountain peak all felt a deep sense of danger, as if a sharp sword that could harvest souls was aimed at them from afar. Fenjie. Without any reason, without even seeing the person, everyone knew that the person who had appeared to obstruct them was the crown prince of Mengshi Zhao, Fenjie. Clang! A sharp sword chi slashed at the place where Wang Chong had been standing, and even space itself seemed to be cut in two. But this sword strike that had been so confident in its success had missed. Fenjie. 60 to 70 zhang away, Wang Chong stared at that Tang Dynasty warrior, who had suddenly appeared where he had been standing, a cold light in his eyes. This person was dressed in the uniform of the Annan Protectorate, and even his appearance and demeanor were no different from those of the Central Plains. But Wang Chong was sure that this person was the crown prince of Mengshi Zhao, the Fenjie that he had been waiting for so long. I underestimated him. A thought flashed through Wang Chong's mind. Wang Chong had originally believed that the reason Fenjie had not appeared was because he was hiding among the Uzun people behind Jiao Sero and had charged in with Jiao Sero. However, Fenjie was even more crafty than he had imagined. At some point, he had changed into the armor of the Annan Protectorate and had managed to sneak his way to the summit without any obstructions. Fenjie had spent a long time studying in the Tang Dynasty and in a place like the imperial capital. Not only did he speak the language of the Central Plains like a person of the Tang Dynasty, his entire demeanor were no different from that of the Tang people. There was not the slightest trace of Mengshi Zhao on him. If Wang Chong hadn't known beforehand and moved the banner and pretended to retreat, Fenjie probably wouldn't have appeared. In the future, this person will definitely be a great calamity for the Tang Dynasty. Even without the incident with Zhang Wentuo, Mengshi Zhao and the Tang Dynasty will inevitably fight. Murderous intent surged in Wang Chong's heart. Whether it was Jelifeng or Fenjie, they were both ambitious rulers. They were definitely not the kind of people who were willing to live a peaceful life and submit to others. Unfortunately, the bedside did not allow others to sleep soundly. No matter what, this father and son duo was a disaster, not a blessing, for the Tang dynasty. These thoughts took a long time to describe, but they only flashed through Wang Chong's mind for a moment. A moment later, Wang Chong heard a familiar roar. "Protect others! He's the crown prince of Mengshi Zhao, Fenjie. Everyone be careful! Young master, quickly retreat!" Shadows flickered. This was, after all, an intense battlefield, and the eagle had long since been on guard. The moment Fenjie appeared, the eagle and his sword became one. Together with the other elites of the Black Dragon Bandit, they took turns to attack Fenjie. But in the next moment, a panicked cry rang out. Right under Wang Chong's eyes, a bizarre and hair-raising transformation suddenly occurred. All the elites of the Black Dragon Bandit, including the eagle, as they approached within several dozen zhang of Fenjie, their armor and boots suddenly began to twist, as if they had come to life. These pieces of metal rapidly twisted and fused together, transforming into humanoid shapes. There was even a humanoid shape that was still in the process of forming, its twisted metal arms viciously stabbing at the eagle and the Black Dragon Bandit elites. This was the cause of the panicked cry from before. "Careful, there's something strange about this fellow," a Black Dragon Bandit cadre harshly shouted. This sort of situation had already surpassed their imaginations. Thump, thump, thump. The twisted metal fell to the ground, rapidly transforming into blue-black metal men that charged at the eagle and the surrounding elites of the Black Dragon Bandit. Even the eagle was caught unprepared by this sudden change. Fenjie's sword slashed at his waist, leaving a deep wound that split open his flesh. Great gung metal halo. At this time, the only one who still maintained his calm was Wang Chong. Fenjie had clearly reached the profound martial realm, and his attainments were extremely profound. The large halo of thorns beneath his feet was none other than the Great Gung Metal Halo, the most difficult of the 5 types of halos to cultivate. Once this halo was formed, it could rapidly gather the surrounding metal elements and transform them into metal men. If one took a step further, they could even transform into a giant Vajra with the sharpness of a sword. Fighting against someone who had cultivated this large halo of thorns was extremely troublesome, because it was impossible to use metal weapons. When fighting barehanded, any martial artist's strength would be greatly reduced. Bang! There was no time to think. Almost instinctively, Wang Chong used the single-character consecutive slash to flip backwards. At the same time, Wang Chong threw out the flagpole in his hand, thrusting it into the ground a dozen or so zhang away. Almost at the same time that Wang Chong finished this, there was a flash of light. Fenjie suddenly appeared where Wang Chong had been standing, blasting a massive hole in the ground. Fenjie's eyes revealed a hint of astonishment as he saw that he had missed yet again. Wang Chong's cultivation was clearly inferior to his, so he could only rely on his martial intuition and awareness to dodge that attack. But could a true martial realm expert have a stronger and sharper martial intuition and awareness than a profound martial realm expert like him? For the first time, Fenjie felt that he had miscalculated. A commander of the Tang dynasty who could command the Tang army, who could display abnormal strength, and who could completely suppress the Uzun in strategy and tactics, had to die. This was also the reason why Fenjie had abandoned the battlefield and incited the Shifeng Jiao Sero to charge over. Roar, do you think you can leave? Fenjie had just charged out when there was a flash of golden light. A massive black silhouette charged out and lunged at Fenjie, who had already vanished into the air. The two quickly began to wrestle and battle. 6-armed Xidagarba Vajra Guardian. This is Batunlu's supreme technique. You actually killed Batunlu. Fenjie's furious voice echoed through the air. The 6-armed Xidagarba Vajra Guardian was a classic example of the Great Snow Mountain Temple's supreme technique, capable of stimulating a person's potential and strength. An individual on the level of the eagle, who had just broken into the profound martial realm, shouldn't have been worth mentioning. But when combined with the supreme techniques of the Great Snow Mountain Temple, his sudden rise was more than enough to tie down an expert on Fenjie's level. Good. Let me see how long you can delay me. Boom boom boom. Sword chi crisscrossed, clashing with the six-armed Xidigarba Vajra Guardian that the eagle had transformed into. The situation isn't good. Wang Chang's mind was in turmoil as he gazed at the two figures on the ground. Even though he had given Batunlu's six-armed Xidigarba Vajra Guardian to the eagle was still being suppressed by Fenjie. If they had the meteoric metal armor, things would have been fine, but in order to infiltrate the Uzun army and investigate the enemy, Wang Chong and the eagle had all buried their equipment in the hills outside the mountain range, resulting in this situation. "Protect milord!" In the drizzling rain, a loud shout could be heard. The activity on the summit had long ago alarmed the surrounding Tang soldiers, and several dozen Annam Protectorate elites had leapt up to the summit and lunged at Fenjie. Not good. Wang Chang's heart tightened, and he only had time to say, "Careful," before the thing he worried about the most occurred. Buzz. Before the Annam Protectorate could get close, the armor on their bodies burst out of their bodies and transformed into metal men that lunged at them. In just a few moments, 30-some metal men had appeared on the summit. The sabers, swords, and halberds in the hands of the Annam Protectorate had been transformed into metal men. All of them were defenseless and could only passively take a beating. Haha, since you want to use a human wave tactic, I'll let you experience what a true human wave tactic is. Fenjie's cold and proud voice resounded through the air. Even in the midst of battle, he still had the energy to observe his surroundings. Boom! After forcing back the eagle with a palm, Fenjie squatted down, and with a boom, the fingers of his right hand opened up and pressed down like an eagle's claw. Boom! Boom! It was as if an invisible blade had sliced through the ground, and the earth split open with a rumble. Tens of thousands of dust fragments shot out from the ground, rapidly condensing in the void, and materializing from nothing. Bang bang bang! In the blink of an eye, several dozen more metal men had appeared on the summit. As the rain poured down, bean-sized droplets of rain fell upon the bodies of these metal men, clattering and clattering. These several dozen metal men had no eyes, no ears, no mouth, and no nose. There was not the slightest sign of life, nor were there any ripples of emotion. All they exuded was the coldest feeling. Chapter 5:32. Wang Chong, the eagle, the elites of the Black Dragon Gang, and the other Annam Protectorate forces, they clearly only had one opponent, but now, it was the side with fewer people that held the absolute initiative. At the base of the mountain, Jiao Sero, who had transformed into a giant white tiger using a secret technique of the Great Snow Mountain, was like a primordial beast, killing gods and Buddhas alike. The Annam Protectorate forces around him were all swept away. One Jiao Sero, one Fenjie. With these two working together, the Tang dynasty had lost at least 500 Annam Protectorate soldiers. This sort of fighting power was simply astonishing. And behind Jiao Sero, even more Uzun soldiers were surging through the gap that Jiao Sero had opened. In this battle, the Uzun soldiers had not only shown signs of turning defeat into victory, they were also showing signs of wanting to decapitate the enemy. There's no time. There's no way to stop these two. Once the two of them join up, the southeast and northeast fronts will all be routed. Wang Chang's mind was filled with anxiety and agitation. He had already used all the strength he could muster on the summit, but even so, he was only barely able to resist. Moreover, he could only parry and not retaliate. The two illustrious foreign generals of the Southwest campaign were not easy to deal with. Since I can't beat them, I can only use that plan. As these thoughts flew through his mind, Wang Chong quickly made up his mind. Bang! He stomped down and his body suddenly shot forward. Before Fenjie could react, Wang Chong had already lunged forward and grabbed the war banner in the distance. Don't tangle with the metal man. Metal men can't be killed. Fenjie's gung metal halo is ineffective against the Wuzi steel sword. Go deal with him. As he carried the war banner, Wang Chong began to run. Also, pass down my order. Square formation 27 and 29, intercept Jiao Sero's personal guards. Those who have already broken through, ignore them. 18th phalanx, 16 steps on the left flank, advance on all fronts. Order the master archers to form a square formation. 1,600 steps to the southeast, with a diameter of 300 feet, shoot. Tell General Zhang Meng of the southwest that the axemen should abandon their defenses and advance with all their might. Don't give them a chance. A series of orders came out of Wang Chang's mouth. The efficiency of the Annam Protectorate was incomparable to the miscellaneous army or the reserve army. In just a short period of time, Wang Chang's order was passed down. Like the rise and fall of the tide, the original line of defense of the Tang dynasty was almost broken by Uzun's people under the chain reaction. But in just a few moments, Wang Chang's orders had not only stabilized the army's line of defense, but it had also begun to push back against Uzun's forces. In just a few moments, the opportunity that Jiao Saro and Fenjie, the two Mongolian and Tibetan leaders, had worked together to create had been obliterated by Wang Chong in just a few moments. Brat, damn it! Sensing the change in the battlefield, Jiao Saro and Fenjie's gazes chilled, their hearts surging with killing intent. Boom! Two metal men abandoned the others on the summit and lunged at Wang Chong with a sharp sword chi. At the same time, the air whistled as a large shield inscribed with refined iron was swung by a massive white tiger. It rapidly spun, cutting through the air as it lunged at Wang Chong. Boom! With several heaven-shaking booms, two massive holes were blasted into the summit by the sword chi and the large shield. Mud and gravel flew in all directions, but Wang Chong was able to barely avoid them by a hair. Boom! Several more sharp bolts of sword chi, axes, spears, armor, and even corpses hurtled at Wang Chong, but Wang Chong dodged them all. If Wang Chong's first dodge could be said to have been a little forced, then his subsequent dodges were much more relaxed. Just where did this brat come from? This time, even the sword-fanged beast Jiasiluo was shocked. For a true martial realm martial artist, Wang Chong's movements were rather relaxed. It had to be known that even a profound martial realm expert would not be able to do it so calmly. When did the Annam Protectorate dispatch such a formidable individual? How come I've never seen him in Lion City for so long? In a flash, separated by several hundred zhang, the massive white tiger and Fenjie glanced at each other, both of them sensing the deep killing intent in each other's eyes. After the Annam Protectorate had lost the formidable Zhangqiu Jianqiong, the remaining Xinyu Zhongtong and his subordinates were nothing to worry about. But with the arrival of the Wang clan's father and son, Wang Yan, and Wang Fu, Lion City had suddenly become abnormally difficult to deal with. Now, an even more formidable fellow of unknown origins had appeared. To Uzun and Meng Shizhao's grand cause, this was definitely not a good thing. From smooth sailing at the start, with the great victory at Irai, to the current abnormally difficult situation, even Fenjie felt that something was wrong. He could no longer clearly see how the situation in the southwest was developing. Even if we can't deal with the Annam Protectorate today, we still have to kill this brat first. Otherwise, with the military talent this brat has displayed, he'll definitely become a great thorn in Meng Shizhao's side in the future. The sky was overcast with thunderclouds and crackling thunder. On the summit, no one noticed that the Annam Protectorate's crown prince Fenjie, Meng Shizhao's eyes were flashing with an intense killing intent. Bang! The air brightened as a misty and majestic milky white sword chi suddenly exploded out of Fenjie's body. Bang! Fenjie forcefully circulated his stellar energy to send back the six-armed Ksitagarba Vajra Guardian Eagle. With a flicker, he used a wondrous movement technique to break through the blockade of the eagle and the other experts on the summit and lunged at Wang Chong. Before he even arrived, the intense sword chi blotted out the sun. Countless pieces of metal were pulverized and gathered from the depths of the earth, transforming into a storm of flying blades that accompanied Fenjie in the air. His aura was so vast that it could even shatter a mountain, much less a human body of flesh and blood. Wang Chong had no doubt that if he took on this full-strength blow from Fenjie, he would die without question. Brat, I don't know who you are, but just accept your fate. Fenjie's cold and aloof voice resounded in Wang Chong's ear like a ghost. The air was filled with the thick aura of death and hostility. Haha. To his surprise, after taking 2 steps back, Wang Chong abruptly stopped and stared at Fenjie, who was closing in on him with no intention of dodging. Fenjie, it's not that I don't want to accept my fate, but if you want to kill me, I'm afraid that you don't have the ability. What did you say? You're about to die and you still dare to boast shamelessly. Fenjie's eyes were as cold as ice. An expert of the profound martial realm was incredibly fast, and Fenjie was someone that even Wang Zhongxi had acknowledged as having the potential to become a great general. But just as he finished speaking, Fenjie had already passed through the air and was rapidly approaching Wang Chong. 30 feet, 20 feet, 1 foot, 2 feet. At this distance, Wang Chong could clearly see the countless web-like tributaries of the torrential rain at the tip of Fenjie's sword. He could also clearly see the reflection of the thunderclouds and the flashing lightning on the helmet that Fenjie was using as a disguise. A cold smile appeared on Wang Chong's face as it rapidly expanded in Wang Chong's eyes. Given Wang Chong's strength, he would undoubtedly die in the face of this kind of attack. But in the next moment, Wang Chong only sneered. Fenjie, haven't you forgotten something? He stepped back with his right foot and dodged to the side. Rumble. At almost the same time, there was a flash of light. Before Fenjie could react, he was sent flying by a black silhouette. Wang Yan! Fenjie cried out involuntarily. With a rumble, he smashed through the curtain of rain and crashed into the ground, blasting mud and rainwater into the air as he smashed a massive hole in the summit. Fenjie, you don't think that you can hide from me just because you're a cicada shedding its carapace, do you? An icy, dignified, and even somewhat rigid voice suddenly resounded through the world. At almost the same time, bang bang bang, the mountain Zifidon Jiao Sero was also sent flying. One powerful field of energy after another appeared out of thin air, enveloping the summit. Jiao Sero, using this kind of method is far too despicable. One after another, the generals of the Annam Protectorate appeared around the summit. These generals of the Annam Protectorate were all tall and sturdy, their auras incomparably valiant. All of them surrounded Jiao Sero. Damn it, you fellows really are a hindrance. An ominous light flashed in the white tiger's eyes, and it stomped down with its 4 feet. Bang! The earth beneath its feet split open, and it soared into the air, carrying a great deal of mud and rain with it as it lunged at the Annam Protectorate forces. Bang bang bang! In a short period of time, the two sides began to fight once more. At almost the same time on the summit, the Crown Prince of Mengshi Zhao, Fenjie, was also locked in combat with Wang Chong's father. This was the first time Wang Chong had seen his father fight. His moves were wide open, but they were tyrannical and fierce. They did not have as many nimble variations, but they had the aura of a battlefield. Every move of his seemed earth-shattering and heaven-shaking, as if he could cleave apart an army of 1,000. And the thick stellar energy that slapped aside the curtain of rain and swept up the mud on the ground had a momentum that could swallow the heavens and swallow the seas. The heavy sword has no edge, but great skill does not require skill. Father's every move has already reached the stage of turning the complex into the simple, making the simple seem complex. Unless one's cultivation and strength far surpass his, it's impossible to take advantage of him in terms of moves. Wang Chong quietly said to himself. His father did not have the potential to become a great general. Whether it was his grandfather or the ministers of the court, no one had ever said that his father had the talent to become a great general. But as a general, his father was definitely the most outstanding of them all. His martial arts were like his way of commanding troops, meticulous and rigorous, making it impossible to attack. Chapter 5:33. Wang Yan, you're like a cornered beast. The Tang dynasty is no longer the Tang dynasty of the past. The southwest is now the world of our Mengshi Zhao and Uzun. No matter how fiercely you struggle today, when the Grand General arrives, the only path left for you is death. Fenjie's voice resounded through the air. Even when facing the pincer attack of Wang Yan and the eagle, Fenjie was still able to just barely resist. Crown Prince, there's no need to waste your breath. Whether the Tang dynasty is the Tang dynasty of the past is not something that a crown prince like you, Mengshi Zhao, can decide. Wang Yan's voice was cold, indifferent, and hard. Even someone like Fenjie, who had 9 apertures in his mind, found it difficult to use words to break through. Death is at hand, but you're still being so stubborn. Even if you manage to escape today, we're just a small vanguard. We're not even worth mentioning when compared to the army behind us. The southwest is relatively flat. At the very least, you won't be able to see any high mountains or great rivers for a very long time. Even if you can escape for a while, can you escape for your entire life? I don't believe that your 2 legs can outrun those with 4 legs. Fenjie's sword flashed like lightning, a storm of sword chi howling around him. Although it wasn't very effective, Fenjie clearly hadn't given up on mentally crushing the Annam Protectorate. Since you're so confident, why do you still pursue us so relentlessly? Since when did the Crown Prince of Mengshi Zhao rely not on martial arts to fight battles, but on his glib tongue to rise to power? Wang Chong sneered from the side. Buzz! Wang Chong had barely finished speaking when the atmosphere on the summit suddenly changed. A pair of bone-chilling eyes suddenly pierced through the heavy curtains of rain and space to firmly envelop Wang Chong. At some point, Fenjie, the Crown Prince of Mengshi Zhao, had removed his disguise. This was also the first time Wang Chong was able to carefully observe the true appearance of the illustrious Crown Prince of Mengshi Zhao. The Crown Prince was about 27 or 28 years old. His face was extremely handsome and his skin was astonishingly fair. Even the nobles in the capital couldn't compare to him. He exuded the aura of a prince who lived like a prince. However, he wasn't quite the same as the princes of the Tang dynasty. Fenjie's entire body exuded a thick aura of aggression. Without the concealment of his armor, Fenjie's true appearance was revealed. Just looking at him would make anyone feel extremely uncomfortable and unwilling to approach him. Not to mention anything else. If my son is like this, then I'm afraid my father isn't far behind. To the southwest, the 6th Zhao of Irai was definitely a serious threat to the Tang dynasty. In the early years, the imperial court tolerated and nurtured traitors, and now they are nurturing a tiger that will bring calamity. Wang Chong quietly said to himself. Although Wang Chong didn't understand any sort of physiognomy, Fenjie was definitely not a kind person. Brat, I don't care where you come from or where you learn the art of war, but you won't be able to walk out of the southwest alive. Fenjie's icy voice rumbled through the air like thunder, announcing Wang Chong's fate. Sword chi tore through the air. As he spoke, he forcefully exchanged several blows with Wang Yan, creating a small gap. At the same time, several strands of sword chi as thick as a finger shot toward Wang Chong with unparalleled sharpness. These changes had occurred so quickly that not even Wang Yan had predicted them. It was obvious that Fenjie's desire to kill Wang Chong was not just empty words. In terms of how much Fenjie wanted to kill, Wang Chong was probably even higher than his father Wang Yan. Thud-thud. With several muffled thuds, Fenjie's attacks all missed. Wang Chong didn't even need to use the single consecutive slash or phantom step to easily dodge them. Using sword chi in front of me? You're thinking too much. Even Crown Prince Mengshi Zhao won't be able to do anything. Wang Chong inwardly sneered. In close combat, with his current strength, even 10 of him wouldn't be a match for Fenjie. But Fenjie had insisted on a battle of sword chi and awareness that he was most proficient in. To put it bluntly, as long as Fenjie didn't engage in close combat, Wang Chong really didn't care about Fenjie at all. On a massive battlefield that involved tens of thousands or even hundreds of thousands of people, individual strength had never been the most important factor. No matter how high the cultivation levels of Fenjie and Jiao Sero were, if they thought that their combined strength could change anything, then they were far too naive. While Fenjie and Jiao Sero were playing with individual strength, Wang Chong was already playing with tactics and strategy. The two sides weren't even on the same level. Generals, listen to my order. Delay Fenjie and Jiao Sero. The Eagle, has our army arrived yet? Wang Chong slid backward in the mud of the summit, retreating Tensum Zhang to increase the distance between him and Fenjie. At the same time, he raised his right hand and flashed the token of the King of Song, his voice loud and clear. Lord, we've arrived. Old Eagle's voice buzzed, carrying with it a slight metallic vibration. After transforming into the six-armed Xidagarba Vajra Guardian, even his voice seemed to have been affected. Boom! Kill! Thunder crackled in the sky, and at almost the same time, the earth quaked and the sky swayed as a tsunami crashed down from the mountain. Although they had arrived late, the 10,000 reinforcements led by Su Shiping and Su Anduin had finally arrived just in time. Looking down from the summit, although it was hard to see clearly in the heavy rain, one could clearly sense that a new force had appeared behind the tens of thousands of Mengshi soldiers when the lightning flashed past. Careful, careful. Another Tang army has appeared. Careful behind. Ugh. It's not the Annam Protectorate. Why is there another army? Didn't the Tang dynasty no longer have any troops to use? Form a defensive line and pay attention to the rear. Panicked shouts of Uzun accompanied the clatter of weapons, the clatter of metal, the whinnying of neigh horses, and the wretched screams of the Tang army. Not even the torrential rain could completely drown out this noise. The army led by Su Shiping and Su Anduin had almost instantly thrust into the rear of the Uzun army. Although Wang Chong, Li Sai, and the Eagle were not there to hold the line, Su Shiping and Su Anduin were veteran generals who would not miss this opportunity. The Uzun army was already facing enormous pressure from the Annam Protectorate, and now, another Tang army of 10,000 had arrived. Facing enemies from the front and rear, the army instantly descended into chaos. Congratulations to user for killing 41,344 Uzun cavalry. Congratulations to user for killing 43,517 Uzun cavalry. Congratulations to user for killing 44,166 Uzun cavalry. The voices in Wang Chong's mind were like a torrential downpour. In a single exchange, the Uzun army had instantly lost more than 4,000 men, and this trend was rapidly expanding. In the art of war, facing enemies from the front and rear had always been a major taboo for an army. At this moment, the Uzun army was in complete defeat. The general trend was set. No matter how strong Fenjie and Jiao Sero were, they were powerless to reverse the situation. Damn it, damn it. Fenjie's eyes turned red as he listened to the screams coming from behind him. He was about to go mad with rage. In this rain pursuit, it was not just the vanguard of the Uzun army that had come, but also the thousands of Meng Shijiao's personal soldiers that he had brought with him. In this torrential rain, the soldiers that he had brought with him in pursuit were the elite of Meng Shijiao's elites, and each one of them had been difficult to raise. But now, Fenjie could also hear their screams. This brat, I have to kill him. Fenjie clenched his teeth so hard they were about to shatter. His side's defeat had already been decided, and Wang Yan and the Annam Protectorate's generals had already arrived. There was truly nothing they could do to reverse the situation. Even if he cut down the commander-in-chief's banner and killed Wang Chong, it wouldn't change anything. Jiao Sero, let's go. Let's go. The great general and our Meng Shijiao elites are still behind us. They won't be able to escape. Fenjie suddenly shouted back, but these words were spoken in Uzun. As the crown prince of Meng Shijiao, Fenjie was not only an outstanding martial artist, but when he had been sent to the capital of the Tang dynasty as a hostage, he had already mastered all sorts of languages. It was not just Uzun, but also Turkic, Goguryeo, the languages of the western regions, as well as the languages of Abbasid Caliphate and Karak Spaz Inu. Fenjie was a true master of both the pen and the sword. Don't be in such a rush. Wait until I kill that brat first. The white tiger opened its mouth, but what came out was human language. Jiao Sero possessed boundless strength. He charged left and right, his eyes locked onto Wang Chong on the summit. The mountain was currently littered with the corpses of Uzun soldiers and highland steeds, and all of this had been caused by the appearance of that brat on the summit. Death and injury were inevitable in war. Jiao Sero had never been a sentimental person. Even if all his subordinates died, he wouldn't feel anything. But Jiao Sero desired victory, and that brat on the summit had already become a stumbling block for the Uzun army. This was the true reason why Jiao Sero wanted to kill him. I should have killed him right from the start. I truly underestimated him too much. Jiao Sero inwardly roared. His Xidigarba white tiger halo came from the Great Snow Mountain Temple and was one of the supreme techniques of a general. It could greatly increase one's strength, so compared to Fenjie, it wasn't as strenuous for him. Although the Annam Protectorate had many experts in the surroundings, as long as he was willing to pay the price, he was completely capable of killing that brat on the summit. Jiao Sero, don't let your emotions affect your decisions. The great general will be here soon, and they won't be able to escape on the plains. There will be plenty of opportunities to kill them. As long as you endure for a while, when our armies meet up, they will undoubtedly die. Fenjie's mind was sharp. How could he not know what Jiao Sero was thinking? He immediately tried to stop him. Jiao Sero was the classic example of a fierce general. He only cared about war and nothing else. He didn't care about the casualties of the Uzun cavalry, but Fenjie did. The Mengshi-Yusang alliance would have even more leeway in the future. Fenjie's ambitions were not limited to the southwest corner of the Tang dynasty. Don't let them leave. Delay them. Archer square formation, hear my order. To the front left, 3,800 paces, fire together. Cavalry formation. Regardless of the cost, pierce through the Uzun formation. Wang Chong had not participated in the battle at the front. A string of fatal orders poured out of his mouth. Compared to the victory or defeat of a single person or battle, the victory of the overall situation was far more important than the victory of a single person. Congratulations to user for killing 45,744 Uzun cavalry. Congratulations to user for killing 47,915 Uzun cavalry. Congratulations to user for killing 48,416 Uzun cavalry. A string of voices howled out of Wang Chong's mind. Of the 70,000 or so Uzun cavalry, nearly 80,000 had been killed by Wang Chong, and the neighing and wretched screams of Highland steeds filled the air. They were being attacked from the front and rear, and there was no room for the cavalry to charge. Right now, the Uzun were only infantry, and they were facing the world's most organized, most disciplined, most cooperative, and at the same time, the most powerful infantry of the Tang dynasty. The result of this contest between infantry and infantry could be easily imagined. We've lost. There are too many Tang soldiers. Impossible. We clearly have more people, so how did things turn out like this? Retreat, retreat. We can't win. Why are there so many Tang soldiers around us? Hurry and find the great general. But we've lost too many people. Only the great general can deal with them. From the base of the mountain to the summit, the battle continued. The morale of the Uzun soldiers had fallen to rock bottom. They had never imagined that this battle would turn out like this. They clearly had more people than the Annam Protectorate, but in the end, they felt like they had more Tang soldiers than they did. It was like they had a body full of strength but no way to use it. Buzz! Seeing the perilous situation, Fenjie suddenly reached into his bosom, took out a thumb-sized pill, and swallowed it. In a flash, Fenjie's aura swelled, and with a single slash of his sword, he forced Wang Yan back. Then, his body shot forward like a dragon. Don't linger. Let's go. If we stay here any longer, we'll be completely wiped out. Fenjie unleashed several fierce bolts of sword chi as he pressed his right hand against the ground, summoning 8 or 9 metal men who did not fear swords or sabers. After forcing back the crowd, he pulled Jia Siluo, who had returned to his human form, away. Boom boom boom. The two valiant Mengshi-Yusang generals were working together to break out of the encirclement. Even if the Tang soldiers wanted to stop them, it was too late. Rumble. In just a few moments, the two of them had forced open a gap in the encirclement and led the army down the mountain. After them, Wang Chong grimaced. He threw the banner into the ground, stabbing it firmly into the ground. Without another word, he leaped onto his white-hoofed horse and charged down the mountain. In this battle, even when Fenjie was charging up the mountain, Wang Chong had not personally taken action. But now, he had unhesitatingly charged down and entered the battlefield. Young Master Chong, be careful. Don't chase a cornered enemy. In the army, Chen Shu-sun was worried for Wang Chang's safety and hurriedly called out. It is advisable to chase a cornered enemy. Uncle Chen, all the generals, listen to my order. Pursue them with all your strength. We can't let them escape. Wang Chong gave the order as he gave the order. The morale of the Uzun army had been shattered, and their commander-in-chief had fled. This was the best chance to expand their gains. If they missed this chance, the next time they met on the battlefield, the Uzun army would probably not be this strong. After them, on the summit, Wang Yan's eyes were grim. After a few moments of thought, he immediately gave the same order as Wang Chong. This time, the generals no longer hesitated. The morale of the Annam Protectorate was greatly boosted, and their cries for battle shook the heavens as they chased after the fleeing Uzun army like an avalanche. Kyle! Their shouts shook the heavens and echoed from all directions. You're tuning in to the Passion Pages YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.